Okay, we're waiting for our participants to join. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and a very good morning. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the webinar third series for the Entitled and Culturation of Digital Education through Open and Distance Learning, ODL. For information, this webinar series is a program jointly organized with Department of Higher Education, Ministry of Higher Education Malaysia, and the Malaysian Qualification Agency (MQA). One of the objectives of this webinar program is to strengthen digital culture and to enhance the existing ODL system independent by higher education provider. Without further ado, please welcome our facilitator, Prof. Dr. Andy, to continue our session. Please, Doctor.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Imran. Perhaps we give us a couple of minutes, probably 3 more minutes, Imran, because I see that the participants are trickling in.
All right.
Just 3 more minutes, ladies and gentlemen, or fellow colleagues.
Slideshow. Okay, Prof.
All right, Imran, 1 more minute as we promised, because I'm tracking the 3 minutes.
Sure.
Fellow colleagues that have registered and coming into the Zoom platform here. Initially, we wanted to begin at 9:04, but I told the host to allow 3 more minutes so that the rest of the participants will be coming in. Won't miss the chance of the opening or the beginning of the session here. Please bear with us, just 1 more minute, 1 more minute. We honor our 3 minutes. Alright, terima kasih pengacara majlis Encik Imran atas pembuka bicaramu. And of course, selamat pagi, salam sejahtera, and selamat kembali rakan-rakan yang disanjungi ke siri webinar ODL yang ketiga ini. Nah, hari ini saya memainkan peranan yang berbeza sedikit, di mana saya bukan penceramah tetapi merupakan moderator untuk sesi di pagi ini seperti yang dimaklumkan oleh Encik Imran. Tetapi anda semua tetap saya simpan dekat di hati. Oleh itu, pantun tetap akan saya hulurkan sebagai tanda persahabatan kita yang telah berputik. Seperti yang tuan dan puan-puan sedia maklum sejak seri webinar ODL yang pertama yang berlangsung pada 1 September 2021. Indah sungguh ilmu dikongsi, indah lagi budi perketi. Mantap sungguh panel hari ini, isu assessment akan diperhalusi. Now allow me to conduct this in adunan bahasa Malaysia and bahasa Inggeris as usual. And I'm so delighted to be with you this morning and to have the honor to introduce our 2 prominent speakers, Associate Professor Santi Ragawan dan Dr. Nobeha Syukur. Now, as for the sequence of event for this morning's session, we will begin with the sharing of insights from both panel of experts on assessment, respectively, and followed by a Q&A session. Now, for the Q&A session, I would really urge you or hope that you can lodge your questions in the pigeonhole instead of the chat function here. If it is possible, kindly lodge your questions in the pigeonhole as reflected in the slides flashed by or projected by MQA. Bak kata pujangga, tak kenal maka tak cinta. Before we invite the first speaker to share her thoughts with us, which is Dr. Nobeha, allow me to provide a brief intro on this petite and knowledgeable lady, whom some of us will call her as Chili Padi of UTM. Dr. Nobeha is an educational technologist, a senior lecturer from School of Education, UTM, for the past 10 years. She is currently serving as the Deputy Director Teaching and Learning at UTM and entrusted to be the Chairman of Malaysia Head of Public University E-Learning Council, MEPTA. So she is indeed a very powerful lady. Now she received her doctoral degree in educational technology, and her research interest is on educational data mining, online learning, and learning analytics. She has conducted various trainings and workshops locally and internationally related to designing online learning. As for research, she headed more than 10 research grants, both locally and internationally as well. And this is related to MOOCs, learning analytics, and again, related to online learning. She has authored more than 100 publications at a young age of what probably in her early 30s, I presume, and graduated 5 PhD students under her supervision in the field of educational technology and STEM. Her recent book is published in Springer Lecture Notes for Educational Technology, entitled Learning Spaces for the Next Generation. Now, it's a very interesting book here. If you're able to get hold of this book, it would be very, very good to see a different perspective from where the traditional institution would embark on. Now, without any further delay, please join me in welcoming Dr. Nobeha for the first sharing session. Dr. Nobeha, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Prof. Andy. Ada pantun pula. Sempat Google tadi tapi tak sempat lagi memilih yang itu kan. But tapi akan saya sediakan satu sebelum kita bersurat hari ini khas untuk Prof. Andy dan juga rakan-rakan pada hari ini. Okay, izinkan saya untuk memulakan pembentangan dalam bahasa Inggeris dan thank you very much Prof. Andy for your kind introduction. Okay, let me just share my slide. Okay. To swap my display. Are we viewing the correct?
Yes.
Correct view. All right.
Assessment at UTM.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So thank you MQA for having me here today. I will be sharing with this is more like a sharing session on how we carried out assessment at UTM. And this will be my flow of presentation. I will be talking about assessment during pandemic and examples of online assessment administration at UTM, issues in online examination, and maybe some lesson learned. And I think there will be more questions later on, so I have very few slides here, and maybe we will have a more rigorous discussion later on. So I have to talk about assessment during pandemic, although today we are not talking precisely about assessment during pandemic, because I think a pandemic has impacted the way we assess our students. And at UTM, in response to COVID-19 pandemic, we came up with 2 guidelines. Number 1 is online learning guidelines, and number 2 is, I think, very relevant to all of us today, that is online final examination guidelines. So we developed these guidelines, especially to tackle summative assessment, especially related to final examination, and how lecturers can conduct final examination efficiently and hopefully by bearing in mind about the validity, reliability, and fairness of assessment. So that's why we have this online final examination guidelines being developed on 20th of May 2020, that is last year. We developed this one in response to COVID-19 pandemic. Now, every semester, what happened in UTM is that we look at the situation, what is the SOP from the Ministry of Higher Education, and then what MKN is telling us to do. And then for every semester, we present to the Senate members, how are we going to carry out our teaching and learning, as well as how are we going to carry out our assessment. So this is, so every time, every semester before the semester starts, we will open up some ideas and alternative that lecturers can choose from when they want to carry out assessment. So this is just an example. I have this in Bahasa Melayu. We specify the types of assessment that we propose, and sometimes there are academic programs that wanted to carry out face-to-face examination, and I think during one time, we did have the idea of having a face-to-face examination. We wanted to have that, but then we have to cancel that out. And then because of the recent SOP and things like that, so this is how we usually inform our UTM lecturers on how can they do things for every semester. So here it says that for academic program that involves accreditation by professional body, sometimes we have more emphasis on this one. Although we understand that professional bodies did issue their notes on how assessment that they did accept online assessment, but we also want to have this alternative for our lecturers as well. So we want to be open for lecturers to select which of the method of assessment is suitable for their respective courses. So we propose this one. We also have for formative assessment, apparently we make it compulsory for all of our lecturers to have them online. For summative assessment, however, we have we provide 3 alternatives, and these 3 alternatives is being detailed out in the guidelines that I show you just now. And before examination starts, we always tell our students they have to read the online examination rules. So these online examination rules and regulation is also developed in response to COVID-19 pandemic. So we tell them that you have to read these online examination rules for you to be familiar about what it says, that what you can do and what you cannot do, and what is the implication if you do this and that. So we have that statement in our learning management system. So every time they open up their courses, so there is this block that says that you have to read this one. And then before examination starts, we always take attendance, of course, during examination, before examination start. So when they scan this QR code for attendance, so we also take that, we put the statement here, we take that they agree to the examination rules that they should have read before examination starts. So this is, I think, maybe not the ideal way of doing things, but this is how we do it during emergency, I would say. Okay. Next is, we also tell our students, because there are many types of summative assessment that our lecturers can carry out for their respective courses. Maybe, for example, this subject is suitable for alternative assessment, but another subject, it is maybe it's not that suitable for alternative assessment. So we have all these options for the lecturers to choose from, but we tell our lecturers that they have to inform their students what kind of summative assessment that they are going to carry out with their students in their respective courses. So, of course, we have to tell our students what is the format, because, for example, if these students take 5 subjects in that semester, subject A is being assessed differently, subject B is being assessed differently. So, the faculty will collect from the lecturers what type of summative assessment that they are going to do with their students. So is that in the form of alternative assessment? Is that in the form of no final examination? Is it in the form of asynchronous online exam? Synchronous online exam with no invigilation and no proctoring? Synchronous online exam using online proctoring, and so on. So this system is being set up in response to COVID-19 pandemic. So we ask our lecturers to fill in the form, to fill in this form, so that the students can view this information, and then they will see in their UTM Smart application, okay, this subject is being assessed this way, this subject is being assessed that way. For example, if our students have problem with internet connection, for example, there are 5 subjects, and all of these subjects require them to have this online invigilation process or with online proctoring, and their current location is not, they do not have very conducive learning environment for online proctoring, for example, or online invigilation. So we have another measure to tackle this student who do not have conducive learning environment for online assessment. So we make it very clear to our students about the type of assessment. And actually at the beginning of the semester, we also tell our students how their teaching and learning will be carried out. Is it entirely online? Is it blended learning? Or is it face-to-face? So we tell this one teaching and learning method before semester starts. And we tell our students about the type of final assessment, summative assessment in the system as well. So they will see which subject, what is the type of assessment. So this is an explanation about the summative assessment. So we can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We can have 8 types of summative assessment, and I think today specifically about online final exam. So I don't think some formative assessment is very much an issue, but we focus more on how can we have a reliable final examination. So this is the method that we tell our lecturers on how can they carry out online final examination. So here is the explanation. So sometimes there is asynchronous online exam. We mean by asynchronous online exam is that the students can download the question paper and then upload the answers later on, so they do not have to be entirely online during the examination. For synchronous online exam, this means that they have to be entirely online during the examination. And then if the synchronous online exam has online invigilation, this means that they will be monitored by lecturers or appointed invigilator, but not necessarily that they have to turn on their camera and things like that. But invigilators will be there. Synchronous online exam using online proctoring because a UTM subscribe to a proctoring system. So if a lecturer wants to carry out synchronous online exam using online proctoring, this means that the students have to be entirely online during examination, and they will be proctored, all of their screen will be recorded, and they have to turn on the camera the whole time that the examination starts, of the examination duration. If the lecturer says that we are going to have synchronous online exam, but no invigilation and no proctoring, this means that the students have to be connected to the internet the entire time of the exam duration, but there will be no invigilator and no proctoring. This is, for example, if we have our multiple choice type of question in our learning management system. But the way we not measure, control the quality of the exam is that we have a very large question bank and all the answers are being shuffled, all the questions are being shuffled. So for that kind of courses, then they can carry out synchronous online exam with no invigilation and no proctoring system. So this is especially carried out in LMS, Learning Management System. Synchronous online exam with physical invigilation, we came up with this one last semester. What we wanted to have is that the students have to be connected entirely online during examination, but there will be someone being there physically, monitoring them, answering questions on the computer. So this happens, for example, if we have our student, they do not have conducive internet connection at their current location. So we send them, for example, to their nearby campus. For example, someone is staying in Kelantan, our UTM student is staying in Kelantan, and the nearest campus to that student is, for example, UMK. So what happened is that we request from UMK for our students to carry out online final examination at UMK, and then we request from UMK to appoint an invigilator physically to be there throughout the entire online examination duration. So this is what we mean by SYNC-P, synchronous online exam with physical invigilation, meaning the presence of the person is there as invigilator. So we also have face-to-face final exam. Apparently, we were not able to carry out this one. Alternative assessment. This is assessment other than not paper and pencil, other than multiple choice question or essay questions. It involves, for example, project, preparation of portfolio, or case study. So this is the kind of alternative assessment that we have. And no final exam. So there are also subjects who says that no, there is no final exam for the subject. So students will have this information, and they are able to see the description of every final exam, online final exam type. So then they will be able to know, okay, so this is how I'm going to be assessed later on. So other than that, we also set up for our students a testing site. For example, because maybe some of them, I don't think some of them, I think most of them are not familiar with online final examination being entirely online or being proctored. So we want to have them, we want them to experience what it feels like being proctored and what it feels like to have to answer questions entirely online. So we set up our learning management system, and we enroll everybody in so they can test taking some quizzes and or submit an assignment. We also have tutorial for them to experience what it feels like to take an examination online. So we hope that this one will give our students better idea before they want to sit for online final examination later on. So we didn't make it compulsory for all of our students to be here, to visit here, but we tell them that if they need to have that kind of experience, then they can go to our testing sites. Now, as I mentioned just now, all of our summative assessment is being carried out online. So we do not have any face-to-face examination or even blended examination, no. It is carried out entirely online. And so here comes the problem where if there are students who do not have conducive learning environment to attend to online exam, to sit for online exam. So what we did was that they have to, students will see whether there is a need for them to sit for to go to the nearby campus to sit for online final examination, and then we will contact that nearby campus, and then we will send out our students online examination timetable, and then so someone will be there when our students go to their nearest campus. So based on our experience, last semester we only have 11 of our students applying for this way, this method, but most of them they did apply, but there are also students who at the very last minute they cancel the application, so we have to call the new university again and saying sorry, our students apparently wants to cancel their presence at certain universities, things like that. So we work with all of the universities around in Malaysia, as well as I think we also did send our students to Polytechnic. So what we need from them is that to use their facility for our students to sit for online final examination. So this is what we do. In a way that we want to make sure that there is no excuses for our students to sit for online assessment. Now, I'm going to talk about the online final examination guideline. So inside this guideline, we lay out the types, the detailing of how, just now we just described what it is, but in the guideline, we describe how can a lecturer carry out synchronous online exam with online invigilation, using proctoring, but if they want to have no invigilation, how they can do that. If they want to have synchronous online exam with physical invigilation, how can they do that? If they want to have asynchronous online exam, how can they do that? So this is what we explain in the online final examination guideline. And we explain what is the equipment and needed to carry out different types of examination. And we explain step by step what they have to do before, what they have to do during examination, what they have to do after examination. And we also embedded the online examination procedure, the online examination rules and regulation, and the frequently asked question. These are the content of in the online final examination guideline. So we have the step by step before, during, and after, and all of these things. And so this is an example. For example, for all online examination for all online examination type, we have guidelines on what they have to do before exam start, during exam, and after exam. So before exam, for example, they have to make sure the students have filled in forms. This form is the internet and computers compatibility form. So this is what it means by the form, because the lecturer have to check whether their students have the minimum requirement, if they want to have proctoring, for example, or if they want to have synchronous invigilation, for example. So they have to check whether their students are able to do this. Then if they found out that their students do not have the necessary equipment and facilities, and then we tell our lecturers that they have to think of other methods of summative assessment. And before exam, we also advise our lecturers to chunk the online exam duration. We tell our lecturers that the longest duration for online examination is 1.5 hours. So if you have 3 hours examination, you have to break that down into 2 parts. 1.5 hour part A, and then you have another toilet break, maybe 30 minutes, and then you have 1.5 hour after that toilet break, after that 30 minutes of break. And then we tell our lecturers that they have to brief the students about the online exam format. Like, for example, do they have to turn on their camera? Do they have to download the question paper? Do they have to upload again the question answer? So things like that. We also advise them, if they have time, to have mock-up session with students, and set a platform for students to communicate about exam. This is very important. We tell our lecturers, if you did not have a quick communication platform with your student for your teaching and learning, but please do have a platform for students to communicate about exam during examination. For example, it can be WhatsApp. Tell our students how they can reach their lecturers. Is it through SMS text? Is it through Telegram? Is it through WhatsApp? Okay, so this is because in case of internet breakdown, or they are being disconnected, so they have to tell their lecturers immediately. And we also tell our lecturers to remind our students to read the online examination rules and regulation. And during examination, our lecturers, we have to take students' attendance, like you saw this just now. There's a QR code that they have to scan. They have to check students' environment. This is not necessarily they have to switch on the camera, but they can opt for that if they want to, if they carried out the online invigilation type of examination. Our lecturers have to be reachable and available during exam duration. We tell our lecturers again and again, they have to be there during exam duration, and allow buffer time up to 30 minutes for our students to maybe to open up, to click here and there, or to upload answers. So we tell our lecturers they can give buffer time up to 30 minutes. That means that if the exam duration is the time to answer questions is 1.5 hours, that means that the entire exam duration is 2 hours, including buffer time. So, but the time to answer the question stops at 1.5 hours. And then during an exam, we also tell our lecturers to remind students to check submission, because when we have all of these examination back to back, and then sometimes they upload the wrong answer script, things like that. Okay, so we ask our lecturers to remind students to check submission. And after examination, lecturers have to check students' examination submission. Did everyone submitted their answer script, and again remind students to check submission during the given buffer time, because we tell our lecturers that they have the right to not accept students' submission after 30 minutes buffer time is up. For example, after 1 hour, then only our students tell us, I'm sorry, doctor, I think I was disconnected just now, and I want to submit my answer now. After 1 hour, the examination has ended. So we tell our lecturers that they have the right to not accept student submission after the given buffer time. So we make clear to students, we make clear to lecturers about this, and we also tell our students about this as well, about that they have to submit or to tell their lecturers immediately if they have problem, especially during buffer time. So this is the declaration. They have to read the online examination rules and regulation before examination. And this is the to-do list. We prepare this to-do list especially for our lecturers. So lecturers have to check the internet availability and compatibility. So we have prepared a form that they can ask their students to fill in, and if students feel like they meet all of the criteria, and then they also have to the students have to read and understand the online examination procedure. They have to submit the form of online examination rules and regulation to their lecturers. And then if they want to sit for the testing site, they can contact us at olc.utm.my if they want to have a specific session. I want to learn how to answer questions online. So they can also inquire from us a private session. And then they have to check the online examination schedule. For lecturers, they also have to check the internet availability, and then they choose the alternative suitable online exam format if they found out that majority of their students are not able to, do not have the required facilities and infrastructure to carry out a certain type of online exam format. And then lecturer has to explain to the students how the examination is going to be carried out, and then they have to collect also the signed form that the students understand about the online examination procedure. And we also tell, this is optional, but we also tell our students to name their answer script accordingly, so that it is consistent, and you know, because there are so many things going on, so we do not want to add additional headache to our lecturers. So we tell our students, please name your answer script accordingly. So examples of online assessment administration at UTM. This might not be an ideal example, because I take this one from my experience, the way I carried out online assessment. But maybe this is an example that I can show to all of you. So my subject, I teach programming language 1. Programming language 1 using Python and also Scratch programming. I also teach block programming to future student teachers. Now, what I did is that my assessment, I have summative assessment, and my summative assessment, the aim is to evaluate students' ability to apply basic concept of programming and solve related problem. And the weight of my summative assessment is 40%. And my exam type is, I divide them into part A and part B. I carried out synchronous examination without online invigilation. And for part B, I carried out my examination asynchronously without online invigilation. So for part A is basically synchronous without online invigilation. Is what it means is that I have multiple choice question. I have about 120 question in my question bank. So they have to answer part A in the learning management system is a multiple choice question, and for part B is a structured question, and they have to download the answer script and then upload the answer script later on. So for part B, they do not have to be entirely online. For part A, they have to be entirely online to sit for the online examination. And my question type is the traditional multiple choice question, and for my part B part is the problem solving question, and it is an open book question. So I don't mind, they want to open their book, or if they want to Google up things over the internet, that's why it says here without online invigilation. I did not invigilate them, but they have a specific time, duration time. Ni tersalah time ni, 11 ni. They have specific time for them to answer the question. So this is how I do it. And I separate part A and part B to be answered with 15 minutes break in between. Sorry, it's not 15 minutes, it's 30 minutes break in between. So part A, they have to answer that in the system itself, in LMS, in Learning Management System, and part B, they have to download the question paper and upload answers, and it must be handwritten. I tell my students that your answer script in part B has to be written, and then you have to capture the photo and then upload that in the Learning Management System. So this is how I do it. And if later on you want to ask me, maybe is there any issues with misconduct and the reliability of the way we assess our students, maybe you can have the discussion later on. So this is how I do it. So this explanation is provided to my student at the Learning Management System. And you know, in our Learning Management System, at the top here, we have all the other previous notes, previous video. I didn't even switch them off because apparently it won't be helping them to answer either part A or part B. So I don't mind. They refer to books because they won't find the answer there. Okay. Issues in online examination. I wanted to talk about the issues in online examination because maybe we can learn from each other how things, maybe if this happened in UTM, or maybe it does happen in your institution, maybe we can learn together how we handle this one. Now, first we have to understand teaching and learning during COVID-19 pandemic. I put here some of the concerns. This include teaching and learning, not only on assessment. For example, UTM carried out full online learning implementation on 1st April 2020. And at that time, we have to provide weekly report to Ministry of Higher Education because we start early. So the perks of it is that you have to do weekly report. So we have to report weekly to Ministry of Higher Education how the students are doing, is the lecturer is actually teaching, how many students turn up, how many students didn't attend the online learning session, and so on. Other than that, we also have to report monthly. For me, myself, for example, at the Center of Academic Leadership, we have to report monthly to University Senate about how students are doing, how teaching and learning is being carried out. So these are the external factors that we think that, you know, we cannot say that we do not want to do anything because we have to do reporting. So we have to do something. Okay. So in order to do something, we have several concerns. When we want to implement full online learning implementation, we have an issue about readiness. How ready are we? But we have no time for readiness. So because they have to quickly transform the way they teach. And then come again the issue on infrastructure. So if you want to embark on full online learning implementation, what about internet connection among students? What happens if they have to share their devices? So these are some of the concerns. And the competency. Students, do they know how? For example, lecturers know how. I think we can train. Students know how. They do not. They can be very competent in in ICT skills, for example. But I don't think many of us here are competent or many of us here know how to learn online. So I think that is also important. So these are some of the concerns. And the quality of teaching and learning, we also have to be aware of the professional bodies that will, later on they will eventually ask us, how did you carry out your teaching and learning during pandemic? And of course, although MQA released some flexibilities in teaching and learning, but the quality has to be there. So we have to think about the monitoring measures. And for assessment, should we have that entirely online? Should we have that entirely alternative? And for us at UTM, we have both. You can choose any of them because we believe that not all courses, it is not one size fits all. So we have online, entirely online assessment. You can also have online traditional assessment. You can also have alternative assessment. But again, the concern is that what is the reliability of it, the validity of it, the fairness aspect of it. So this is very important that we have to be concerned when we want to have our assessment online. So I talk a little bit more about reliability and fairness of assessment implementation, not so much on validity, because I think validity of assessment usually is validity of how you develop the question. So I think how the monitoring measures on how to develop question is being carried out at respective faculty. They have this vetting session, so somehow the questions are being cross-checked by all of the panels. So validity is not really an issue here about the question being developed, but we are concerned about the reliability of assessment implementation and the fairness in assessment implementation. So the reliability of assessment implementation, it deals with, for example, we have to be aware of several websites, that allow students to upload question paper, and then there will be someone answering the questions, and then students can get these answers within less than 1 hour, and then they can copy paste that answer in their exam sheet. So things like that. So these websites, for example, Check Study, Study.doku. So this is the things that we need to be aware of. And about the fairness in assessment implementation, is it fair for us to have, for example, we did want to have within one subject, we have a consistent way of assessing students. For example, if in this course, if it is being carried out using online synchronous final examination with invigilation, then all of the students will have the same method, of course. But there are also, in certain cases, that some of the students doing this method is not suitable for them. So how do we fit? How do we adjust the way we assess students so that it is fair for that student and for the rest of their friends in the way that we carried out our assessment? And of course, we are governed also by if any misconduct, we have peraturan academic to penalize students who cheat, for example. And we always refer back to peraturan academic if anything happens related to assessment. And finally, a little bit on lesson learned. Using previous semester question set is a no-go. Don't do that. Asynchronous final examination is riskier. Asynchronous final examination is where, for example, students download exam paper and then upload answer paper. They do not have to be entirely online during the examination. So this is from what we found, this way of conducting online final examination is a little bit of risky. It is riskier. It is still reliable if you really have a very good set of questions. And we found that proctoring examination is necessary especially if you want to really stick to the traditional way constructing question. For example, you still want to have multiple choice question, and your question is still a closed book question. So proctoring examination is necessary in such cases. Higher order thinking and personalized questions. So we found out that higher order thinking questions and personalized questions can somehow lower the risk of any misconduct. So I said lower the risk, not eliminate the risk, eliminate misconduct, but it lowers the risk. For example, for personalized question, you can have questions that, you know, you can have a problem solving and says that open up Google Earth and find your current location, print screen your current location. Based on the print screen of your current location, calculate so and so and so. You see, it's a very personalized question because they have to print screen their current location and the question is based on their current location. So this is what we say as personalized question. If you want to know more about personalized question, Associate Professor Dr. Aisha from UMP did carry out this kind of question. So have it very personalized to students. I think she also have this question where they have to capture their ID, where we have, where in that ID, there is the location, the address of the students, and then the question is being built based on student's address, something like that. And finally, beware about chain reaction. So while we are very eager to control this and that, very eager to, monitor this and that, sometimes when we say we put a certain barrier to certain things, and then apparently they found another way of doing things. So this is what I call as a chain reaction. So we have to think a little bit far. No, it's not a little bit far. We have to think very far before we want to impose something, for example, because it can result to another implication that is more disastrous than the one that we are currently doing. So this is what I wanted to say. And finally, we also did apply additional measure to our question papers. This semester, we make it compulsory for our lecturers to put a watermark on our question paper so that if in case our question paper is being circulated all over the internet, and then we know this one belongs to UTM, and we can pinpoint or we can find somehow students who did this. The thing about finding students who leak question paper or who cheat is not about because we want to penalize that student. It's about the fairness to the rest of the students who has been answering questions diligently, but somehow there is this one person who cheat and things like that. So we believe that it's not about, we want to make it fair for the rest of the students as well. So this is what we aim for when we want to monitor and invigilate questions and impose this and that to our students and our lecturers. That's all from me. Thank you very much. I think I see a lot of questions. I think we will talk about this in detail later on with questions. Thank you, Prof. Andy. That's all from me.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Nobiha, for the enriching session that you have shared with us. Certainly, there are a lot of good practices. There are a lot of good practices that UTM has implemented, and I believe some of which would have also been implemented by the other institutions. And of course, these good practices can be emulated by some of us that are attending this session this morning. And I do see there are a lot of questions being posted in both the Pigeonhole as well as in the chat group. Now, perhaps we would like to remind colleagues, rakan-rakan, if it's possible, please post your questions in the Pigeonhole. Otherwise, I fear your questions in the chat function will be drowned among the thousands of messages that are coming in, greetings and etc. and comments as well. Now, just to recap what Dr. Nobeha has shared in the past, almost like an hour or so, is the practices that UTM has implemented during the past 1.5 years, where we see a shift from the physical proctored exam to an online exam. Now, you remember in Dr. Biha's presentation just now, there are a few permutations when it comes to online exam. Whether there is an invigilator, on-site invigilator, which is online invigilator, or it is without an invigilator. And also under this combination, we do see things like synchronous and asynchronous kind of mode being embedded in the conduct of the exam. And what we learn from Dr. Bihas and team, and especially UTM, is that they cater to the entire spectrum of stakeholders. They align the expectations right from the students to the lecturers and to the administrator. So everybody is on the same platform, understanding the requirements and expectations. So this is very, very crucial, because whatever process or procedures that we implement right from the beginning, we should see there is proper engagement with all the stakeholders, and all the stakeholders would understand why A is doing this, B is doing this, and C has to come along to be integrated. So these are the things that we have we have seen in Dr. Biha's presentation, and a lot of questions are coming in. And please reserve your questions, colleagues. We will go into the Q&A session right after Professor Madhya, Dr. Shanti's session. Now, let me move on to the next speaker, Associate Professor Shanti, who have held impressive positions and contributed significantly in the ODL field. Therefore, she is no stranger in the ODL arena. Now, let me share with you her achievements and accolades for the past probably 3 decades or 4 decades. Now, Dr. Shanti is currently a program coordinator in Open University Malaysia, and she has held senior administrative positions in the capacity of Vice Dean of the Faculty of Business and Management, Deputy Director of Center for Graduate Studies, and Directors for the Center of Student Management, as well as Center for Tutor Management and Development. And the list goes on and on and on. I'm just highlighting some of the prominent positions that she has held in OUM. Now, she has been with OUM for the past 20 years. Now, can you imagine? She is definitely the person whom you would like to consult, especially on the liku-liku hidup or the asam garam of ODL life. Now, currently, she is appointed as Ahli Majlis Jawatankuasa Akreditasi for the 5th term, as well as serving as a member in the Majlis Jawatankuasa SWA Akreditasi with MQA. Now, her field of interest and specializations cover a broad spectrum ranging from QA in higher education, online teaching and learning, accreditation of prior experiential learning, and this is something very interesting, as well as research on juvenile prisoners. She's a resource person and appointed assessors for MQA and MOHA. She was the secretary to the MQA panel of experts, developing GGP, the guidelines to good practices for ODL programs back in 2011. So it's almost like a decade ago. Now, Dr. Shanti was the recipient of the award by AAOU, ASEAN Association of Open Universities, Inter-University Staff Exchange Fellowship, as a research fellow for a month to Open University of Sri Lanka. Now, she was also the recipient of the Italian Government Award for 3 months study program to Italy. An author of 24 books, her current interests and involvement include medical camps with her 3 beloved doctor children and charity works with her alumni. Now, without further delay, let us welcome this remarkable and humble lady, as opposed to the chili padi, Dr. Biha. Let us welcome, put our hands together to welcome Associate Professor Dr. Shanti for the sharing session this morning. Over to you, Dr. Shanti.
Thank you, Prof. Andy. Thank you for the beautiful introduction. I'm delighted that you actually started with a pantun. And while I was waiting for Dr. Nurbiha, while she was presenting, I actually penned down a pantun myself.
Oh, great.
So I guess I should do justice by presenting a pantun now.
Yes.
And Dr. Nurbiha for sure would be ending with a pantun later on, yeah? So let's start. I did this during school, so I'm doing this like after 4 decades, yeah? All right, here goes. Bunga cengkeh, bunga lawang, harum mewangi di ruang dapur, usaha gigih, pensyarah sayang, menguji assessment tanpa tidur. Okay, here goes. All right, so thank you, Prof. Andy, and Dr. Nurbiha. I think you set the platform just nice for me to now present what goes on after the administrative works that the university has actually done for the educators, for the student, as well as the administration of the exam unit and so on, yeah? So what I am sharing basically are the different types of assessment, and something that I'm very happy to present would be to share with all of you the question bank that we have developed in Open University Malaysia. Cik Imran, I've asked for Cik Imran's assistance to share my screen. So I see some very nice chats there. Thank you, Siti Norakma. All right. Okay, my slides are on assessment. I have 2 parts I'll share with you in a while. I'm Associate Professor Dr. Santi Ragun from Open University Malaysia. I have been with OUM since the year 2001. Okay, right. Okay, shall we start, please? The next slide. Okay, this is my content. I have 2 parts. The outcome-based education and assessment. And my second part would be the question bank system, yeah? I will try to finish within an hour. It's 10:05 now. I'll try to use my 1 hour to present these both parts, yeah? So let me now start with part 1. Next, please. So OBE and assessment. Let's take a look at what these 2 are all about. Next. Okay, so an overview. What is an assessment? Why is there a need to assess? How to assess? And what to assess? Now, as lecturers or as educators, as instructors, we will always have this thing coming in our mind, yeah? When it's time to assess our students, what exactly is it that needs to be done in order for the assessment to be an effective one, right? So let's look at each of these questions one by one, yeah? Next, please. Okay, this is the definition that I have put forward. There are many other definitions for assessment, but this is something that I prefer, that I feel it hits, it hits the exact meaning of assessment. So let's now look at what assessment is all about, yeah? So assessment is the process of gathering and discussing information from multiple and diverse sources in order to develop a deep understanding of what the students actually know, what the students actually understand, and what they can do with their knowledge as a result of their educational experiences. Yeah, these experiences come from the instructors, from the learning and the teaching that takes place, all right? And the process that culminates when assessment results are used to improve subsequent learning. So this is the definition that I feel would be most pertinent when it comes to defining an assessment. Now, another definition would be assessment involves the use of empirical data on student learning to refine our programs further and to improve student learning. See, once the assessment goes out, once the students have sat for their examinations, right, either formative or summative, then you get the results out, and the university will be actually generating all sorts of data for the instructors as well as the university to gauge whether the students learned what they're supposed to have learned. And these data is used to further improve or to refine the programs that we have, we have put out, and to further improve the students' learning. Yeah. Okay, let's look at the next slide, please. So, why assess? To punish the students? To pass or fail the students? Now, let's look why we exactly assess our students. Yeah. Next, please. I'm made to understand that in today's webinar, we also have teachers, yeah, other than lecturers from the various universities in Malaysia. We have among us teachers from schools who have actually indicated their interest to follow our webinar today. Yeah? So why assess? We want to promote learning. And why assess? Because we need to measure our students' performance. Yeah, we need to award grades, which indicates whether and how well a particular student has attained the standard learning, the stated objectives. Yeah, we need to determine whether a particular student is sufficiently well prepared in a subject area to proceed to the next level of instruction. Let's take, I'm actually from the Faculty of Business and Management. So if we take a look at management subjects, let's take the most basic subject, principles of management. Yeah, a subject, as in principles of management, is actually a prerequisite before the student goes on to the next level, to the next semesters, and this a little bit more difficult courses. So principles of management is always a prerequisite for other courses that comes along the following semesters. Now we need to know whether this student is sufficiently well prepared in the subject area of principles of management before he or she is able to proceed to the next level of instruction. Let's say strategic management, which is a little bit more difficult. The next subject that comes immediately after the principles of management. Yeah, and why assess? Because we need to provide feedback to students to indicate their level of attainment and also to diagnose any misunderstandings or learning difficulties. Okay, graphs from students' grades actually will show whether the students have misunderstood the question. We as instructors, we prepare the questions thinking that it is clear, it is good, it is easy to understand, but somehow we find a majority of students have misunderstood the question and they have provided answers which are far away from the rubrics that we have prepared. So we need to diagnose any misunderstandings that may have occurred on the student's part, yeah, and also learning difficulties. Yeah, we have among us students who are blind. We have among us students who have physical disabilities. So we need to actually capture all these before we are able to say that, look, our assessment is an effective one. Yeah, we also have to provide feedback to the teaching staff, to the instructors, to identify and diagnose any ineffective teaching methods or techniques. Okay, this is actually for continuous quality improvement. Yeah, CQI. All right, next, please. Now, types of assessment, Dr. Nurbiha has beautifully presented on the types of formative assessment. She has given good examples of how summative assessments look like. So there are actually 3 types of assessment here. We are used to the formative assessment and the summative assessment. I will not speak about this. We also, what we have here, what we call the self-evaluation. This is actually done by the student himself or herself. Self-evaluation, it's a self-assessment. Next slide, please. Right, in a nutshell, this is what a formative assessment and a summative assessment, how it differs. So if we look at the assessment for formative assessment, it is actually to gauge the progress of students in their learning. Okay, this is to see whether the students are learning. You give them assignments, you give them spot quizzes, it's a continuous assessment which runs along their semester. Okay, it's a continuous assessment. It is also to indicate the next step to be taken to advance the students' learning. It is to assess the student's progress and also his or her learning needs in relation to the curricular outcome. What is the outcome? For every subject, we have outcomes, we have learning outcomes, we have LOs that we need the students to attain. Yeah? And maximum weightage, this we have to refer to the program standard. Various programs in our universities, we have different program standards for them. And for undergraduate and postgraduate, we have different program standards. So for weightage, we have to refer to the NQA's program standards. Yeah. Now, if we look at the summative assessment, let's look at the assessment of learning for summative. It involves assessing students' achievement by grading and by certification. We have in some universities what we call standalone courses. Yeah. So after each course is completed, each subject is completed, there are gradings and there are certification. All right. Otherwise, it is by subject. All right. Now, it is used for institutional accountability and for quality assurance purposes. Like some of our universities, we have board of directors. We have to present to our board how the university has progressed, how the student has progressed when it comes to their programs and so on. Maximum weightage, again, we have to refer to the program standards as set by MQA. Next slide, please. Now, self-evaluation. I teach the postgraduate students. Yeah, I teach the PhD students, the DBA students, the doctorate in business admin. Well, I find this all the time. Yeah, classmates have already started writing their dissertation. There's a typo there. I didn't do this. I picked it up from the internet. Classmates have already started writing their dissertations, and I'm just sitting here. So I always get this from my students, who are doing their project papers as well as their thesis and dissertation. So it is actually a self-evaluation. So the assessment would be, it requires students to play an active role of becoming independent in their own learning and their own assessment. Every student should do a self-evaluation. Okay, it focuses on that particular student's capacity over time to be their own best assessor, to assess themselves. They know if they have achieved the learning outcomes as set for the particular subject or the particular course. Whenever I start teaching, I always pinpoint the learning outcomes for the topic. I'll always start with the learning outcome. I tell them, look, at the end of this topic, you guys are supposed to know these 1, 2, 3, 4. If you don't know this, something is wrong either with me or with you. So please look at these learning outcomes, and you have to achieve this at the end of this particular topic. So this is how I always start my classes, because I have to tell the student about the learning outcomes. It's just not listening to me. It is just not doing the assignment. It's actually evaluating the outcome that comes from these processes. Yeah. It assesses the student's thinking about his or her learning. Of course, there is no weightage, but I would say it has a very, very high weightage. Yeah, nothing like self-evaluation. Next slide, please. Now, these are the guiding principles for evaluation. Yeah, evaluation should relate directly to the learning outcome. Sometimes instructors are overzealous. We come up with all kinds of questions. I'm a moderator for many of our subjects. Yeah, when I moderate exam papers or assignments set by other instructors, I always refer to the learning outcome. This is what the student has to achieve at the end of the lesson. Now, is that being evaluated, or something else is being mentioned in the assignment? So when I find there is no relationship between the questions that are being asked for the students, I always refer back to the subject matter expert. I call the subject matter expert, I walk over to the subject matter expert, and I tell the person, look, this is the learning outcome. Please look at the question that you have prepared. It doesn't jive. And then when they realize, oh yes, the questions are not related to the learning outcomes, they actually come up with a new set of questions. So I think this is a very important guiding principle for evaluation. The evaluation must relate directly to the learning outcomes. So now each evaluation activity should be designed to promote students' growth. What do you want the student to achieve at the end of the subject, at the end of the course? So each evaluation, you should, as an instructor, you should evaluate whether it is designed to promote a student's growth. Yeah. So the actual activity should be useful practice in itself, and the feedback should be usable by the student. Whatever the student is doing, whatever feedback the student is getting must be usable by the student. Now, you will know that Open University Malaysia serves an array of students. Yeah, we have students who are fresh from school to students who are of 80 over years of age. The oldest student to have graduated from Open University Malaysia, if I'm not mistaken, was 87 years old. So we have an array of students here. We have CEOs, to movie stars, to beauty queens, to doctors, to burger sellers, and moms, homemakers. I have homemakers in my PhD program. So the feedback should be usable for the student. Yeah. Now, multiple evaluation strategies should be provided to master achievement of the outcome. Multiple evaluation strategies. Do not only come up with one type of strategy. There should be various terms used in order for the student to provide the best for the assignments or the exams that is being given to the student. Yeah, students should clearly understand the methods for evaluation for the test or any activity that's being conducted. So these are the guiding principles for evaluation. Next, please. Now, how and what to access? How and what to access? Can we go to the next slide? Now, this is the OBE process. It is a bit complicated at this point of time. The slides are provided to you. So kindly look at the slides, when you are relaxed, and you would understand what the slide is all about. I will not bring you through this. It's quite a complicated one if I'm to present now, and it's time consuming, but these are all something that you actually know. Yeah. So the OBE process starts with planning, developing, implementing, and evaluation. But the assessment actually comes into the picture at the planning process and the developing process. Okay, if you look at the arrow, so this is where the assessment comes in, at the planning and developing process, as well as the implementing process, yeah, the assessment. Can we go to the next slide, please? Now, how to assess? Now, these are the learning domains here. If you look at the extreme left of the slide, you look at the domains: knowledge and understanding, cognitive, practical, interpersonal skill, communication, digital skill, numeracy skills, leadership, autonomy, responsibility, personal skills, entrepreneurial skills, and so on. Now, these are what we are assessing. And if you look at the extreme right, you will look at the examples of methods for assessment which are suitable for the kind of learning outcome domains as stipulated. Yeah. So among the types of assessment methods would be, example, written tests, quiz, practical tests, presentation. Yeah, if it's an oral English subject, of course, we want the student to present. There is no other way to assess a student but to listen to her or his presentation in the English language. Okay, now we may have portfolios. You might have essays, project papers, and so on. It could be even a group work. Yeah, so these are the types of examples of assessment methods. And how do you actually teach to, for the students to come up with these sort of, for the students to be assessed such a way? What are the teaching methods that you would want to have? Yeah. So, for example, case studies, lectures, tutorial, industrial attachments, perhaps, and so on. Yeah. Next slide. So, what to assess? We are actually assessing the CLOs, the course learning outcomes. This is what we're actually assessing. Everything comes back to the course learning outcome, the CLOs. Yeah. Now, each CLO is tagged to multiple topics. Now, in OUM, we use modules. Most of our modules have 10 topics. There are modules with 9 or 8 topics, and there are modules with 12 topics. But a majority of our modules, we have 10 topics. Now, the CLOs are tagged to multiple topics. Topic 1 might have 2 CLOs. Topic 3 might have the same CLO plus another one, and so on. Yeah. So multiple topics are actually tagged to, each CLO is tagged to multiple topics. Yeah. Now, as a subject matter expert, as an SME, as a subject matter expert, we have to first decide what skill that we want to test for each of the CLO by looking at the topic that is tagged to each of the CLO. And a topic can be tagged, as I said just now, a topic can be tagged to multiple CLOs. Yeah. Next, please. Now, this is an example, okay, of how the CLOs are linked to the topics. All right. So if you look at this, this is a subject on, I'm not so sure what subject. Oh, this is on Java. Yeah, this is a computer course. So we have CLO 1, course learning outcome 1, course learning outcome 2, course learning outcome 3. And if you look, you would probably the next slide. Can we look at the next slide, please? Okay, if you look at the next, I tell you what, let's go to the next slide. I think I have another slide. Okay, can we go back, Imran? I'm so sorry. Can we go back to the earlier slide? Next, the earlier slide. Yes. Okay. The CLOs now will be connected to the different topics in the module or the course. Yeah. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay. I think I'll go to the next one. Let me go to the Bloom. Okay. This is the Bloom taxonomy. I'm sure most of us know what a Bloom taxonomy is. I do know that some universities or some faculties use different taxonomy, but basically it comes down to Bloom. Yeah. So we have what we call remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and the most complicated one would be the creating. Yeah. And from level 1 to level 6, level 1 is basically a recall or a remember kind of an outcome, and level 6 is more of a creation. Yeah, coming up with a product or coming up with any points of view. And if you look at the extreme right, you'd see how the techniques of questions are actually put out. For example, if it's level 1, remembering, we would say list down or state, simple. Yeah. And if we look at level 6, which is more complicating, you would see terminologies like construct, create, design, build a business plan. Yeah, for one of my subjects, I make my students come up with business plans for our new venture development subject that we teach at the MBA level. I ask the students to come up with a business plan. So they have to do a lot of creating, a level 6 kind of a learning outcome. Yeah. Next slide, please. Okay, so the similar one, Bloom taxonomy, where you look at the cognitive skills. So basically, this is what we use in order to assess cognitive skills. Now, let's look at the next slide. Okay, the next one, please. Okay, now these are to evaluate the other skill, which is the psychomotor skill and the affective skill. Yeah? Normally, these two skills are assessed in assignments. Yeah, in assignments. Psychomotor and affective domains are usually can be assessed during assignments. Yeah, so let's look at the psychomotor domain and the affective domain. I won't go through it, but basically this is what it looks like. Yeah. Okay, next slide. So now we have come to selecting the right type of evaluation. So how do you know what type of question to use and when to use it? So it actually depends on the skill you are testing. That is why I keep saying whatever questions that we are constructing, we have to look at the learning outcome, and we have to look at the skill that we want to develop in the student. We can't just simply do questions. You know, when I do a moderation, sometimes I feel bad when the lecturer has put in so much of effort, but it does not test what it is supposed to test. It is not measuring what is supposed to measure. Sayang. So when I go back and I tell the SME, look, you know, it doesn't jive. Kindly look at the skill that you're supposed to test. Kindly look at the LO that the student is supposed to achieve. But the question is a totally, you know, an alien question. So please change it. But once the SME or the subject matter expert understands this concept of selecting the right type of questions, then you would have no trouble having the SME to redo or to tweak the particular questions here. Every semester we go through this, especially if the subject matter expert is new at coming up with the evaluation. Yeah. Let's look at the next bullet. Evaluation should always match as closely as possible the actual activity you're teaching. You can't be teaching something else and evaluating something else. That is not proper at all. It's improper to teach A and to evaluate Z. Okay, it is not fair to the student. Yeah. So example, programming, you should evaluate the skills and the student's performance. If testing ability to describe a procedure, then give an essay. If you're testing reading, okay, you're testing reading, you want the student to recall certain items, then MCQ probably is the best. And we would not be using, I mean, in most cases, I wouldn't say MCQ is not possible for analysis or comparative. Actually, you can, you know. it depends on the quality of the MCQ questions. There are some universities out there, not in Malaysia, out of Malaysia, that actually use MCQ to even evaluate analysis and comparative questions here. So it is not impossible. It depends on the quality of the MCQ question. But we would not, in most cases, we won't use MCQ to test reflective practices. Yeah, usually we use essay. So can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so question types versus cognitive levels of learning. So remember the Bloom taxonomy just now, yeah? So knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis. So this is sort of, it is not, this is not exhaustive, yeah? You can add on, you can remove and so on, but this is just a sample of what it could be when you are talking about the types of question and you want to peg it at a particular cognitive level of learning, yeah? Okay, next slide. Okay, this is a very important consideration. I always advise subject matter experts whose papers I moderate to not to over-assess the student or under-assess the student. That is why TOS is a very important gadget. Yeah, TOS, the table of specification, is something that is very important, where you indicate at the very beginning what you want to assess and you go by it, you follow it. So those of you who are not using TOS, my humble advice would be to please have TOS. I'm not so sure how many institutions do not use TOS in your assessment, but TOS is something very, very, very important if you want to assess the student rightfully, all right? Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, that's the end of part 1. Great, I finished 30 minutes on part 1. I will spend about 30 minutes for my part 2, yeah? So part 1 on assessment over. Let me now share with you part 2. Can we go to part 2 slide, please? Right, I'm just going to take a drink. Just give me 1 minute. Okay. Now, part 2 is about question bank. Let me give you a little bit of intro on question bank here. Now, question bank is a system, or I would say it's a bank with, computer system. It's a repository database where all the questions are banked in. All questions are banked in, and these questions are generated when it is time for assessment to be laid out for the students. Yeah. So for OBE, QBank is, I would say, a very effective method of churning out exam papers. Now, the story of QBank, or the story of a question bank, goes way, way back. Yeah, in the past, we have actually hired external people to come and help us with the question bank, but to no avail. Yeah, they came, they did, they left. It wasn't what we wanted. The question bank that I'm about to share with you now is a homegrown project spanning a couple of years. Yeah, it wasn't something that we created overnight. It took a lot of thinking, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears before the QBank actually came into being. Yeah, it wasn't an easy task. There was a lot of things going on, a lot of understanding that needs to be put in. But eventually, we have this system, and it has been in operation even before NCO. So when NCO came, when COVID-19 came and hit us on our face, at Open University Malaysia, no feathers were ruffled, you know. We were okay. We were all right. There wasn't any jittery hands and jittery feet. We carried on as usual. Now you must understand, Open University Malaysia has a huge number of students, yeah. At one point, we had 35,000 active students. 35,000 active students at one point. At some point, we have as low as 25,000 students, active students. Active meaning seeking service, yeah? Because we have students who have applied for deferment, we have students who are dormant. I'm talking about students who are actively seeking service. So at one point, we had 35,000 students, local students, Malaysian students, yeah? At one point, we had 25,000 students, and some semesters, especially semesters where we have festivals like Hari Raya, Deepawali, and Christmas, you know, they're all coming in, we will have lesser students registering for the semester, yeah? So sometimes we have like 17,000 students, yeah? So we are catering for a large number of students. So, okay, let me now take you to the next slide. Now, this is a technical presentation, yeah? So I won't go too technical. What I'm going to show you is, I'm just going to show you the interfaces, how it looks. You could go back to your institution after this, discuss at your faculty level or discuss at your center level, how you too can come up with a question bank. Yeah, to me, I tell you, this is a lifesaver. Let me share with you. Prof. Andy knows. I was away from academic for almost 2.5 years. Yeah, I took unpaid leave because I had to take care of my ailing mom. My mother was having dementia, and my dad was in his 90s. So when my mother was suffering from dementia and my father couldn't handle my mom anymore, I took a long leave to take care of both of them. And which means that I left the academia. Okay? And I did not do any teaching at all because I teach overseas. I teach in Bahrain. I teach in Vietnam. I couldn't travel because I had to take care of my parents. So I stopped all forms of teaching. But when I came back, after my dad passed away, of course, my mom passed away before my dad. My dad passed on after that. When I came back to work, yeah, a couple of months ago, and suddenly I had to do these questions, yeah, for my students. And I found out that my subjects had been given to other new lecturers, and I inherited subjects that I've never taught before. See, I have my own personal question repository in my laptop. I have questions spanning 20 years for the subjects that I have been teaching over and over and over again for the past 20 years. But when I came back after my long leave, and suddenly I was given subjects that I've never taught before, and suddenly I had to prepare exam papers and assignments for subjects that I have never taught. I mean, I know these subjects, but I've never taught before. I didn't have a repository. Question bank was the one that saved me. Okay, otherwise I would have probably gone through a moment of, I don't know what would have happened to me. The question bank actually saved me. So in your institutions, if you are hiring new instructors, yeah, to teach a subject, if you have a question bank, you don't have to worry, because the question bank contains hundreds and thousands of questions that has been, added practically every other week. So a question bank is actually a database of question items. Okay, let me go to the next slide now. Okay, so actually many other institutions have question banks as well. I don't know how many of our local IPTA and IPTS have question banks, but these are some of the examples of question banks by other institutions. Yeah, and if it's And normally these question banks, they cater for MCQ normally, but our question bank caters for MCQ as well as essay, as well as for assignments. Okay, that is how we have designed our question bank here. So normally question banks by other institutions, they are used for randomly generating test items, MCQ test items. All right, next slide, please. Okay, now this is how our question bank system looks like. OUM question bank system. This is what it looks like here. You put in your name, your ID, and your password, and then you log in. It is actually, when someone asks us what is a question bank system, I would say it's a assessment management system. It's a system to manage assessment, MCQ, essay type, assignments, formative assessment, summative assessment. It can practically manage any sort of assessment. Yeah. Okay, next slide, please. Oh yes, it is 100% original, 100% homegrown by OUM. Among other things that we created in OUM, we have our own LMS. We did not take from any other country. We have our own learning management system that we call MyInspire, and we also have our own question bank. We have other homegrown databases as well. Yeah. Okay, next please. Okay, as a lecturer, I'm putting myself as a lecturer, as a teacher, as an instructor. Okay, what happens? Okay, go on, next slide please. Okay, plenty of issues. I just told you an issue. I was away for 2.5 years. I came back. I had new subjects to manage. I would have gone bonkers, but question bank actually saved me. Next slide, please. Right. So some of the issues that an instructor would face when it comes to assessment would be, it's a laborious repeated task, especially if you have too many subjects to handle per semester. And imagine if all these subjects are new subjects for you. Is a new instructor, new subjects have been given to you, and you don't handle 1 or 2 courses, but you have to handle, let's say, 7 or 8. So it's a laborious repeated task here. You can go bonkers if you have to keep on creating original questions for all your subjects. Yeah. Then we have the CLOs. Now, each subject, each course may have 3 CLOs. Some subjects have 5 CLOs. I have seen some subjects even having more. And when it comes to assessment, you have to assess by linking the questions to the CLOs. I have mentioned this in the beginning of my slide, beginning of my presentation, where the questions are tagged, the topics are tagged to the CLOs. The questions are tagged to the topics, which means the CLOs are again popping up now, all right? And we have to measure the learning performance. Are the students learning what they're supposed to learn? We have to measure this, yeah? And then, of course, we have the 5 learning domains by MQA, yeah? So these are actually the issues that an instructor would have to go through. Next slide, please. Okay, the processes in assessment management, yeah? Now, if you are an instructor, if you are a teacher, if you are a lecturer, you are a professor, so you have to now create questions. So the first thing you do is, among the job processes that you have to do, number 1 is you have to enter the question items. So entering the items, okay? You have to specify the table of specification. You have to specify first the TOS. Then you generate the assessment. Now, after generating, we have to evaluate the question item. Yeah, we have to evaluate. Then we have to evaluate the CLO, achieved or not. And then you would have the physical paper, or at times you need to come up with online demand exams. Now, let me share with you, Open University Malaysia, we also have campuses in 10 other countries. Yeah, we have campuses in 10 other countries, from diploma programs right up to PhDs. So questions for these learning campuses, we have our learning centers in Bahrain, we have learning centers in Saigon, in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam, we have in Sri Lanka, we have in India, we have in Ghana, we have in Somalia, we have in Hungary. So we have 10 in Maldives. Okay, so we have students who are actually over there. So sometimes we have to come up with online demand exams because they now have to sit for an exam. So in OUM, we are the ones who generate the exam questions. Yeah. So we don't only have our students, but we also have students overseas that we have to cater. Yeah. And if you look at some of the local questions, we may have some Malay terminologies. In fact, OUM questions, our is a dual language. We have the English version and we have the Malay version. We have the English version and we have the Malay version. But when we do online questions for our international collaborators, we remove the Malay version, and some of the questions we have to tweak. Sometimes we say Bank Negara, so we have to remove the word Bank Negara because they wouldn't know what it means, and we have to probably replace it with other suitable questions. So these questions in the question bank actually can be tweaked as and when the need arises. Yeah. Next slide, please. Okay, so as I said, it's a repository system for assessment items. Yeah. Let's look at the other slides. Okay, so we have MCQ, as I said before. We have essay type questions that we can, bank in. We also have coursework, yeah, coursework question, and assignment questions that we also can bank in, yeah. Next, please. Right. So, if let's say we take a subject, yeah, I'm not so sure what subject this is. Let's say this is a subject of accounting that has 9 or 10 topics. So for let's look at topic 1, yeah. So we have topic 1. Topic 2, topic 3, and so on. Now, if you look at the RE is for remember, UN is for understanding, AP is for application, AN for analysis, evaluation, and for creating, yeah, creation. Now, if you look at these, those numberings inside, or the item indicator inside, you would see words like T1, C1. It means T1 means topic 1, C1 means from recall. So there are 3 questions. If you look at this, yeah, 3/3, you notice that there are 3 questions, and all the 3 questions have been used previously. This is what it indicates. There are 3 questions, and I have used up all the 3 questions in previous semester. So as how Dr. Nurbiha said just now, if you do not want to use previous semester's question, then you do not have a question in topic 1 for recall. Now let's look at the second, for understanding. There are 9 questions and you have used up all the 9 in all the previous semester, last semester, 2 semesters ago, 3 semesters ago, you used up all the 9. So you have none. So it is time for the SME to add on questions. Now, if the SME adds on, you would find an indicator. For example, let's look at AN, yeah, ANC4. Let's look at ANC4, okay, for analysis. You'd see that there is one there, T7C4, meaning T7 meaning topic 7, C4 meaning analysis. You'd see 0/2, meaning there are 2 questions, and none of these questions were taken in the previous examination. None taken. So you can actually take 2 questions from topic 7 for analysis. But if you do not want to ask an analysis type question, then you cannot take this question. You have to add on in the other, what I would say, drawers. We call these the drawers. So each drawer contains questions from a particular topic, from a particular Bloom taxonomy. So that is what is indicated in the bracket. So when you see 0/0, meaning there are no questions in that drawer. There are no questions for topic 1. There are no questions, evaluation questions. All right. So this is what each drawer would mean. You take one look and you can see how many questions you have, how many questions have been used previously, how many questions there are still for you to use for the current semester. So the subject matter expert is assigned to these subjects for her or him to add on and to use whenever the need arises. Next slide, please. Okay, as I mentioned to you just now, our question bank has both the English version and the Malay version. So for local use, we use exam papers that has dual language. For overseas, we do not generate questions with the Malay language. Yeah? So only English pops up. So when I moderate, I only moderate the English version of the questions generated from the question bank. All right. Next slide, please. Okay, here comes another process of reviewing the items. Now, you have gone through the drawer. You have now selected the questions based on your toss. Now you want to review. So this is the interface for you to review all the questions that are in the question bank, because you may find there are no questions. There are questions that has been used last semester, but you like to take a look at it and maybe you want to tweak it a little bit. So you can actually look at the question, tweak it a little bit and add it back again as a new question. So you are adding on questions to the question bank here. So review item is where the approval hasn't been sought. You yourself are looking again at all the questions that you have now selected. You would be either approving or you would be discarding. Now, why would you want to discard questions from the question bank? Maybe the topic is no longer there. You know, when a program goes for accreditation, sometimes the panel recommends that some of the topics to be collapsed or some of the topics to be removed and added into another subject. So when that happens, you would have to discard the items from the particular topic. Let's say the topic is removed altogether from the particular course. Yeah, topic 7 is removed because topic 7 is redundant, because topic 7 exists in another subject as well. So when you remove this particular topic from your module or from your course, then you have to discard the items as well. So you can discard these items so that the question banks only contains questions that are up to date. All right. And when you review, you can review all the items. You can review by topic. You can review only by the cognitive level. Let's say you only want to review evaluation questions. You can tick evaluation. Or let's say you want to review only creating questions, creation. So you only click at creation and you don't look at the others. So it makes life a little bit easier. You want to look at the cognitive level or you want to look at the date created. So you select which you want to review, and you review before you actually approve the item for the particular semester exam. Yeah. Next, please. Okay, this is for adding coursework. So a question bank repository is not only for exams, it is also for the subject matter expert to add to the repository all the coursework that we have prepared for our students. Yeah. So you just have to drag it from your folder and drop it into this particular, what you call box here. Next, please. Okay, so assessment, as we have mentioned earlier, What is an assessment? Assessment is actually a system to generate assessment, yeah, for generating assessment, yeah. Next slide, please. Okay, so how to produce assessment based on CLO? So as I mentioned earlier, TOS, all right. We look at the CLO, we don't want to over-assess or under-assess. Therefore, the CLO is very, very important. The course learning outcome is very, very important. We look at Bloom's, we look at the type of assessment, and we look at coverage. Assuming that you have covered topic 5 and 6 in your assignment, and you do not want to cover this topic in your final exam, so you don't have to select topic 5 and 6 because you have already assessed them earlier in the assignment. So you don't have to pick this topic at all. So the question that will be for your perusal will be all minus topic 5 and topic 6 because they have been assessed earlier. Next, please. Okay, looks complicated. It isn't. As I told you, if you look at topic 1, available questions are 0. But if you look at, that's in CLO 1, yeah? CLO 1, we have topic 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Topic 4, we have topic, I'm not so sure what it's covering. But if you look at CLO 3, we have all the topics for CLO 3, yeah? And if you look at CLO 3, topic 1, we have 16 questions. If you look at CLO 3, topic 2, we have 10 questions. If you look at CLO topic 3, we have 12 questions and so on. So now for an MCQ question, I have to select 40 questions. I have not selected. Here is where I am selecting the questions. And based on the SLT, I will know how many questions to select from which CLO, from which topic. Okay, so these are the available items. Now I have to decide the number of questions from which CLO, from which topic. I can see the actual weightage and I can see the weighting based on the student learning time, yeah? Okay, next please. So this again is the drawer as I mentioned just now, yeah, on Bloom's taxonomy. So I would be selecting the number of questions based on Bloom's. So if it's AP C3 application, there are, for example, where the arrow indicates, where the yellow arrow indicates, there are 11 questions. I have not selected any. I can now select maybe 2 questions from this box and 3 questions from another box. Right? Next, please. Okay, this is the TOS for coursework. All right, the SLT has been mentioned at the end. And marks, how much of marks am I allocating for each CLO? Now, if you look at marks, you'd see 15 marks have been allocated for CLO 1, 45 marks has been allocated for CLO 2, meaning for this particular exam paper, I only have 60 marks. But I do not have any marks for CLO 3. Now, the reason being, CLO 3 has been assessed for coursework, for the continuous assessment. CLO 3 has been assessed in the coursework. So I will no longer assess CLO 3 for the final exam. So all this is, shown to you at one interface in the question bank. Next, please. All right. So this is what I mentioned just now. 15 from CLO 1, 45 from CLO 2, but when it comes to, CLO 1 is assignment, 15 marks, CLO 2 is assignment, 45 marks, so 60 marks was allocated for the assignment, and for the final exam, 40 marks, I'm taking it from CLO 3, yeah, I'm taking it from CLO 3. So by looking at this, when MQA officers come to audit my program, when they look at the individual courses, this is what I show to my to the panel, yeah, that CLO 1 has been assessed in such a way via assignment, CLO 2 has been assessed such a way via assignment, and CLO 3 is assessed via exam. So this is what I show to the panel, and this is also what I tell myself or how I have done the assessment for my students, yeah. Next, please. I'm almost coming to the end, yeah? So finally, we come to generating the exam paper. Now, how do we generate exam paper? We as subject matter expert, we do not immediately generate the exam paper, yeah? It goes for moderation. So when a subject matter expert has prepared and has indicated that he or she has approved her paper for review or his paper for review, then the moderator comes into the picture to moderate the exam paper. So there is another pair of eyes looking at the question, comparing the CLO, comparing the TOS, comparing with the topics, and giving the indication, okay, good, this has passed the moderation process. Next slide, please. Okay, so as I mentioned just now, MCQ or essay both comes into the question bank. Yeah. Next, please. Okay. Again, this is a repeat of just now, but what I want to show is the blue box right at the bottom here. Once the moderator is satisfied at the quality of the exam paper, the moderator puts in his or her mark that it has been moderated. Now the subject matter expert generates the exam paper by clicking at that tag over there, and the exam unit will be ticked that this paper now is ready to be administered. Next slide, please. Now, when the moderation process is on, or the subject matter expert wants to look at how the draft exam paper will look like, he or she can actually click a button here to see the camera copy of the exam paper. How would the paper look for the student? You can actually click at the button and you can look. And you may want to replace the item because you feel that, oh my God, it doesn't look too good now. It looked good, but I don't like it. So you can actually replace the item, yeah? It's very easy to replace the item. You can even take it from your folder and you can place it over there. Next, please. Okay. This is what I said, the camera copy. If you want to look at the clean copy of the exam paper, there's a button to push. It's formatted in MS Word or even PDF. The page numbering is automated and it is print ready. Yeah, print ready. And of course, we have a rubric that we don't share with the student, but it is there also in the question bank. Yeah, imagine a lecturer leaving the organization, retiring from the organization. He or she brings with her or him this rich load of questions. You lose everything when a SME leaves the institution. You lose all the questions that he or she has. But with the question bank, it is actually deposited in the question bank, and he or she leaves, it doesn't matter. We still have the questions with us. These questions were generated during her or his tenure with the institution. So we actually own the questions here and we want it. So this is where it's deposited. So exam paper is automatically formed in a template format. Next slide. And this is where the approval or the reject button is. Okay, a moderator can reject the question here if he or she finds the questions are not suitable, they are not testing what it's supposed to test. You can actually reject upfront. The moderator can reject. Yeah. Next, please. Okay, this is the online MCQ exam via QBank here. When a student does an online exam, an online MCQ examination, this is how it looks like. All right, there are 40 questions. One has been answered so far. So the student can see. And then the student can also see the time left. 1 hour, 12 minutes, 19 seconds available. So this is how what the student will see when he or she sits for an online MCQ exam via QBank. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, generating coursework or assignment. I've spoken to you earlier, but let's look at the next slide. Okay, so these are the courseworks. These are all the courseworks for this accounting subject. Yeah, this is an accounting subject. All the coursework. You know how difficult it is to actually come up with a exam paper or an assignment, yeah, for For accounting papers, they are long and windy, and you have to be so careful with the numbers and so on. Here we have a list of coursework for the SME to choose from, to tweak and to add on again as a fresh piece of work. Or if the SME wants, he or she can actually put up a fresh one. Okay, so they can download, they can edit, or even delete if the particular topic is no longer in the subject. Yeah. Next slide, please. This is the TOS for coursework, just like earlier, cognitive or affective or psychomotor. Yeah. Next. Okay, this is the outcome performance, the CLO performance. Next. All right. So the Q Bank, a single platform, yeah. One particular platform can evaluate all these. Yeah. A single platform can evaluate all this. The CLO, the Blooms, the performance of the question, the performance of the CLO, the performance of the components, whether it's exam or coursework, and you can look at the difficulty index, whether you want a recall question or whether you want an analysis or a synthesis question, and so on. Yeah. Next, please. This is not very clear, but if you look at the graph at the bottom, you can actually see the outcome of the exam component by the students. You can actually see the outcome of the exam component. Yeah, sorry, it's not too clear here, but you could see how the graph is indicating something. All right, next, please. Okay, security features. I mean, this is what we have. User-specific roles. I play the role of subject matter expert. I also have the role of a moderator. Subjects that are assigned to me are the only subjects that I am able to enter, do whatever, and come out. Yeah, there are two-factor authentication as well. So everyone will know when you entered, what you did, when you came out. Okay, so there are security features here because it's a question bank. Yeah. Next. Other features. Yes. Next, please. Similarity checker. I was told by Prof. Andy that there were questions before this on similarity checker. Now, this is where, as I mentioned just now, there are this array of questions for each topic for a subject. Array of questions. We sometimes do not have the time to go through each and every question. We select based on TOS. And sometimes, without us realizing, we will find 2 or 3, or in this case, 4 similar items found. That means there are 4 questions for this exam paper that has similar terms used. So the question bank will actually indicate that there are duplication. There are duplication of the same question. Let's say question 1, question 5, question 25, and question 40 are similar. So there's a button here for similarity checker for you to look at these questions which are similar, for you to replace the questions from the other questions from the bank. There are so many out there. Why pick the same one? So you can actually choose another topic, another Bloom taxonomy, and come up with another question and check the similarity checker again until you find no similar items. So this actually avoids having duplication of MCQ questions in a particular exam paper. Now, sometimes you find question 2 and question 5 same or similar. So you want to avoid this, you can do this in your question bank. Next, please. So this is where you edit. Since it's similar, you can edit your questions here, either by removing the question altogether and replacing, or you can tweak it. Next, please. Okay, you can even change the Bloom's cognitive level, assuming that you inherited these questions from another subject matter expert. Yeah, the subject matter expert is no longer in the university, in the IPTA. I'll need 1 more minute, Prof. Andy. I see you there.
No worries. No worries, Shanti. You have plenty of minutes.
Almost done. Huh? So assuming that you feel that this question should not be having this cognitive level, go ahead and change it. There's a pull down menu there. You can change to other Bloom's taxonomy. Yeah. Next, please. Thank you. I'm done.
All right. Thank you so much, Prof. Shanti. I think that there are wealth of information that you have shared. Certainly, I believe colleagues here, as I was scrolling down the nebulous thread of chats, they truly appreciate what is being shared.
Thank you. I wasn't able to read it at all.
Yeah, a lot. That's why I was thinking, oh my God, there are some questions that they have raised we may have missed. And really urge colleagues, if possible, again, please post your questions in the pigeonhole. I've managed to copy some of the questions out from the thread, and some questions are directed to our Dr. Nobeha and as well as SSU. We'll go through that together as a team. But to summarize what Prof. Shanti has shared, I think this one actually encapsulates the entire ecosystem of the constructive alignment. We all are aware when we talk about constructive alignment, it's about devising or developing the teaching and learning methods as well as the assessment so that it is in line with the CLOs embedded in the various courses. And the machineries, I think the question bank that you have shared, I think have aroused a lot of interest among colleagues there, because in a way, I think this particular system, not only about question bank, will be able to remove a lot of this burden, unnecessary burden on the human resources part, and allows us to randomize the question, allow us to tag the questions based on the complexity level, right from the Bloom's taxonomy to the various domains in the MQF, from cognitive, affective, and psychomotor. And of course, the learning outcomes domain is stipulated in the latest MQF edition 2. So I believe a lot will be asking you soon, Prof. Shanti, how can they gain access, whether OUM has this arrangement where they can subscribe to the system, or whether there's a capacity building, or whether a lot of things, I believe. And even they may ask you questions like, where can I get those systems that allow me to develop my own question bank, or where can I subscribe, any providers? And these questions, I think it will be directed to Dr. Beha as well. No, not at this moment, but I believe when we run through the list of questions in the pigeonhole, these things will surface. So with that, Imran, Mr. Imran, could I trouble you to project what is in the pigeonhole first before we dwell into the questions in the chat where I've extracted? Okay, this all the questions are projected based on popularity votes, as I was told. So you can see there are actually 6 votes, meaning there are 6 individuals here among us, but perhaps there could be more who didn't vote. The question, as you can see, all of us, as projected in the screen here, in the table 4, which is the MQA 0102 documentation, does it make sense if there is no tutorials at all, but we still have the test and final assessment? Dr. Beha or Prof. Shanti, would you like to offer any views on this?
I will let Prof. Shanti to do the honor of answering the question.
Yeah, sure.
Now, I believe this is a technical question. Perhaps Norbiha, if you have, you can share with us later. But in our in OUM, we have what we call the e-tutorials, the electronic tutorials. Yeah, we have synchronous forums, and where the students come on board. And we have tutorials at a stipulated time of the week. So tutorials are actually conducted in OUM. In OUM, there is no way no tutorials are conducted, no way, meaning must have tutorials. If the lecturers do not conduct the tutorials, the admin staff will come after. And just to share with you, in OUM, we have 12,500 part-time instructors. In OUM, we have 12,500 part-time instructors, out of which about 3,000 or maybe 2,500 teach every semester. Not all teach because not all subjects are offered every semester. Yeah. The minute the tutorials are not conducted, the admin staff will be in touch. Even cancelling tutorial is a huge big offense. You have to mengadap, buat surat tunjuk. Sebab kenapa tidak adakan tutorial pada hari dan masa yang ditetapkan. We have had even our own instructors who couldn't make it for the tutorials on that particular day, having a surat.
Yeah, we lost you there, Prof. Shanti, just now.
Oh, okay.
But it's okay. It's okay.
All right. So basically, in our case, we must have tutorial. So I wouldn't know of the answer for this for those who do not conduct tutorial, because all our subjects all mesti ada tutorial. Maybe Dr. Nurbiha in UTM, it's different?
Yeah. In UTM, there are subjects that has no tutorial. But again, we give this authority back to the content expert, because they do know what is relevant for their subject. So we have this kind of flexibility in place. But if initially in your course information is stated there that it has to have tutorial session, then it has to be there. Then the tutorial session has to be carried out. However, if initially in your course information it says that there is no tutorial, and then you can have no tutorial lah for that subject. So it depends on the course owner whether a tutorial is necessary, and if it is necessary and it is documented in the course information, then you have to do it, regardless of pandemic or not, and then it has to be there. So this is what we do. But we have some of the subjects that has no tutorial at all. It depends on the courses, on the related courses. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Nurbiha and Prof. Shanti. I think to sum up this, the answers to this question, it is good for Ms. Atika perhaps to fall back on the principles of constructive alignment. Because when we talk about constructive alignment, as we mentioned a short while ago, it is about devising the teaching and learning methods, as well as looking at the various modes of assessment. So these two are like brothers and sisters in helping the academics or the subject or the content expert to assess or to achieve the prescribed learning outcomes. So as Prof. Shanti expressed her views from the perspective of an ODL institution, tutorial is actually a requirement for almost all courses. And the tutorials can be in the form of even lab session. And we all understand, and there are a lot of studies being done in other open universities around the globe, that as long as there is human being, they would want this face-to-face tutorials, whether it is physical face-to-face tutorial or virtual face-to-face tutorial. At the end of the day, we are still human with a heart that we want to get connected. We do not want to talk to robots, even though the AI may be very advanced now. So coming back to this one, the tutorials can be in other forms that we mentioned. It's not necessary that it has to be in a class where there is facilitation of learning process, as what Dr. Biha has mentioned. So I would really, or rather three of us here would advise Atika and whoever that is here to revisit the constructive alignment, because that will set the entire scene as to how your teaching and delivery can be done, and also assessment, development of the assessment methods or strategies to look at your final achievement of your learning outcomes. I hope that answers your question, Atika. And Imran, can you flash the next one? Okay, this is a simple question again. It is a question that states, if a course requires psychomotor as an assessment, what would be the best approach or tools to be adopted? I think that is what the question is about. It sounded like an OBE from a perspective an OBE, right? Prof. Shanti, would you like to take on?
Sure. Okay, now for a course that needs psychomotor as an assessment, what would be the best approach tools in creating the assessment reflecting the curriculum? Now, I would believe probably, I'm just giving some examples here, a demonstration of what the learning outcome indicates. For example, as I mentioned just now in my presentation, if it's oral English, we have a subject called oral English for our students, yeah? So probably a demonstration of the English language acquisition in terms of, of being able to present an issue well and so on can be recorded. I mean, that's what we do in OUM. We record, if I was a student, I would record my speech and I will upload it for the instructor to give the assessment. So demonstration is one such example of an approach. The other would be a presentation. A presentation, it could be a PowerPoint presentation, it could be a video recording, you know. There are many methods that can be done from a remote area and uploaded for the instructor to assess and to award marks. So I would say some form of demonstration. I remember even like AutoCAD, you know, we had that. So we wanted students to produce the work and to present it. We have even students from overseas. I have PhD students from overseas. I make my students do a recording from their mobile phone and to upload it. So probably these are some of the methods that I can think now. Dr. Nurbiha, Prof. Andy, perhaps you have others?
Yeah, Dr. Mia, would you like to offer any views on this?
Yeah, I would propose the same way as well, to do a demonstration through videos. I think currently, because if you cannot meet face to face, that is the most probable way of doing it, or for them to be able to display their ability. Maybe this one can be in the form of project, but I think students have to be informed first about the workload that they have to bear at the end of the day. But I think lecturers have to be clear about the direction of the whole assessment. That is very important for the students to be prepared and to be ready beforehand. Because I think to do a demonstration, that takes a lot of time. To record a video, that also takes a lot of time. And some of the students wants to go extra mile in editing a very good video. And for us, if you want to assess, again, we have to make sure that the beauty or the professional look of the video is not being assessed, but we want to assess their demonstration. Because sometimes we get carried away with the way the video is being presented. For example, wow, these students have a very good skills in editing video, but we do not want to assess their skills in editing video. We want to assess their ability to demonstrate something. So we have to put a very clear line that to not be carried away with the look and the presentation of the video, but their ability that demonstrate in the video. That is the thing that we want to assess. Sometimes we have to remind ourselves again and again, because we sometimes tend to be biased. We hope we are not biased when we view a very nice video and this person has a very maybe a quite blur video. but they demonstrate the ability correctly. So that is the behavior that we want to measure, but not the quality of the video presentation. That's the thing about video that we have to be aware of, I think.
Yeah, indeed, Dr. Bihar and Prof. Shanti. I think both of you have actually resonate this principles of assessment where we usually talk about validity, right? Validity actually refers to the ability of the assessment to measure what it's supposed to measure. And for the assessment to measure what it is supposed to measure, this is where we talk about different forms of assessment or methods that we have to adopt. And what Prof. Shanti, Dr. Bihar has actually shared is actually the kind of assessment that would address what Amiro has mentioned here on the psychomotor domain here. All right.
Just
So
a little bit more, Prof. Andy.
Yeah, sure. Please.
Add on this slight thing, yeah. Dr. Nurbiha mentioned just now about information needs to be told to the student, communicated to the student of the type of assessment that will be involved, especially when it involves psychomotor, because preparation takes time, as how Dr. Nurbiha rightfully mentioned. What can be done, as what we do in Open University Malaysia, is we upload the assignment 1 month ahead before the semester actually starts. So even before the first tutorial, the students can start to do their assignment. So I think that allows students quite a bit of a leeway to prepare for their assignment, to be aware of their assignment and so on. So when the first tutorial comes, they start asking questions about, what to do, how to do, when to submit this, that, and so on. So I think letting the student know beforehand, before even the semester start, by uploading the assignment, I think that would give them ample time to prepare, even before the tutorial one starts. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I think Dr. Bihar also mentioned in her presentation just now, there's something like a course guide or course information that outline the CLOs, the assessment weightages, the type of assessment, and perhaps the deadline of submission, and the whole range of information related to the courses, not particularly on the academic content, but on the administrative aspects there. All right. So I hope we have addressed the concern raised by, or the question raised by Amiro just now. Now, the next question here is an anonymous question. It seems like online exam procedures are very lecturer-centered or institution-centered, displayed by multiple rules. How can it be made student-centered? So since this is a new norm for them. I think this is a question of how we manage this online examination procedure, and in it itself, I think it is about learner-centered. It's just, perhaps it doesn't surface well. It looks like a teacher-centered kind of thing. Both panel members, any views on this?
If I may, Professor?
Yes, Dr. Bihar.
I think because maybe I show a little bit extra about the examination rules and procedure, but what we meant is actually for the students to have choices and for the lecturers to be able to fit into their student situation. That's why we have a list of many methods. I think we have 8 types of online procedures. What's lengthy is the step before, during, and after for lecturers to carry out the procedure, so that they do not have, they can get help and do it and have some guide on implementing it. But what we meant is that we have this variety of types of procedures, so that the lecturers can choose from after they get feedback from students. Because we ask the lecturers, okay, you have to tell your students this is how you're going to be assessed, and then your students will be able to know, and then they will respond to you, whether they don't have the enough infrastructure, they don't have the devices or whatnot, and then you have to again fit accordingly to your students' need. So what we want to try to have in mind when we have these multiple methods is try to accommodate our students actually. So we hope that by having all these kind of methods, we can fit to our students' needs. That is what we initially have in mind. But maybe the way I present it, it seems like, it is very lecturer-centered and institution-centered. But we have that initiate alternatives so that students can choose from, and they can give feedback to your lecturers. You know what, I cannot do this kind of assessment because of what? And then the lecturers again have to choose some other way of assessing their students. So that is what we have in mind when we have these multiple methods of procedures.
Thank you, Dr. Biha. Prof. Shanti, any?
Just like to add on, I always believe in practice makes perfect. In online learning, there's actually a lot of barriers for the students, a lot of barriers, a lot of deterrents. Age is a deterrent. When you have a very matured person, a very senior person at the age of 70s or 80s, having to look into the laptop and finding material. I mean, it's really a difficult affair. We have matured students in Open University in Malaysia. We get the young ones to help the senior ones, hand-holding, engaging. And also we have the learning centers, where these students can fall back on. They can get the assistance from the learning centers that we have all around the country to be engaged in using the peripherals. Sometimes they don't know how to access internet and so on. So lots of barriers, I do understand. And it may look like as though it is very institution-centered. Apart from age as a barrier, peripherals as a barrier, we also have location as a barrier. We have students in Sabah and Sarawak who come from the pedalaman. Internet is not available for them. How do they access education being in the pedalaman? There's a lot of barriers, and as how Nurbiha just mentioned just now, the variety of assessment that we are offering our students is what we can do at this point in time to make it look student-centered. It cannot be one form fits all. There must be a variety of assessment methods and a lot of engagement with the students. You cannot leave the student out there alone in the cold, They will leave. They will register the first semester, and by the third tutorial, they are gone. They lose interest and they leave. In order to keep them engaged, because we believe in lifelong learning. Prof. Andy, I've done this LLL for a long time. We believe in lifelong learning. We don't want to let them go. So hand-holding and engaging them in learning is most pertinent. So I think when it comes to, I think all institutions have that in mind to be student-centered. In fact, MQA wants everything to be student-centered. That is the only method that we should be going forward. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Prof. Shanti and Dr. Biha again. And just to sum up this particular question or concern raised by our colleagues, anonymous colleague, whatever support services, learning support services that we have put in place for our students, it is always the learner-centered approach. It's no longer the sage on the stage where Cikgu will be the guru besar in the whole teaching and learning process. The universe itself, the center of the universe is actually the student right now, if I were to use an analogy here. So whatever procedures that we are sharing here this morning, particularly the online exam shared by Dr. Nurbiha and Prof. Shanti, it is actually to facilitate the learners. it is not to dictate saying this is the only way for you, but this is to help them to overcome the challenges that they are facing in the on-site proctoring exam. And we know this is very, very critical, particularly during the past 1.5 years where there is restrictive movement among citizens in Malaysia, as well as around the globe. So everything is still about learner-centered. It is just the procedures and processes that are implemented is required because we want to ensure the credibility and integrity of the exam at the end of the day. Because otherwise, people will lose confidence in the institution if there is no proper house rules in place. All right, but it is still learner-centered in essence. Okay. Next, Imran, please. And while Mr. Imran is flashing or projecting the questions, we would also, I mean, three of us, me, Prof. Shanti and Dr. Biha, would like to thank individuals who have offered their views as well in the chat function. I notice there are a lot of mind-provoking thoughts that you have offered in the chat group, and certainly I think we are seeing truly an engagement or a session where we engage with a lot of the colleagues, not only within Malaysia, and I notice there are some who are outside the border of Malaysia. So welcome colleagues again, those who are not from Malaysia. And coming back to the question here, this question actually is soliciting our views on what is the best percentage ratio recommendation for formative and summative assessment. Now for this, I think before I open up to Dr. Biha and Prof. Shanti, I think in Malaysia, we have quite a number of program standards that have been developed by MQA, almost close to, or rather more than 20 plus. In each program standard, they would have actually indicated the range of the percentage where you can adopt for your formative and summative assessment. And what is embedded in the program standards, they are actually classifying them as continuous assessment and final assessment. You realize that they have actually some of the program standards, they actually indicate that these are the range of percentage that you can adopt for your core courses, for your dissertation, for your project. So there is no one particular percentage that we can say the best percentage ratio, but fall back on the program standards, there are a range of ratio that are allowable for various programs or discipline. All right. So if your views resonate with mine, probably we can move on to another question. And Dr. Biha, Prof. Shanti.
Yeah, I agree. There is no one correct rule of or percentage ratio on that. It depends on the program standards as well. But maybe in UTN, most of our courses, it is 60-40, 60 for continuous assessment and 40 for summative assessment. But there are also 70-30. There are various of them.
And sometimes at the different level of qualifications, at a master, postgraduate level, and undergraduate would be different as well.
Yes.
Right.
I have to agree to what Prof. Andy has just mentioned. There is a range. So it is best to actually follow the program standard for each of the program. And in OUM, we also follow the 60-40, 60 for the formative and 40 for the summative. But for some subjects, it is 50-50. For some subjects, it's 40-60, and we also have 30-70. So depending again, as how Prof. Andy said, the level of the program and also depending on the program standard. So there's a range. But all these needs to be shared, needs to be decided by the faculty and agreed by the subject matter expert before we can actually put up good assessment material for the students. Correct. I think the faculty has to actually come up with some sort of underlying principles to be followed by each and every one of the instructors. Thank you.
Then each of the instructors then are given the autonomy to use diverse or assessment methods, right?
Yeah.
And also one thing that we would like to draw the attention of colleagues, the recent business studies program standards actually do not say that you have to have a final exam for your final assessment anymore. It's not mandatory, it can be an option. So there are various options that you can use. If you were to refer to the latest program standards, they have given a lot of autonomy to the institution, because at the end of the day, they go back to the achievement of the learning outcomes, whatever modes of assessment or methods that you use. It goes back to that again, as resonated by Dr. Beha and Prof. Shanti over and over again in their presentation.
I personally, I welcome the new program standards for the business courses.
Yeah.
Because when it comes to ODL, as I mentioned just now, we have students ranging from CEOs to housewives. So when we have something where there's an autonomy for the institution to actually not have a final exam, we now are able to build this skill among our learners to bring their world of knowledge from the workplace to the classroom and bring with them the theories and concepts learned in the classroom back to their workplace. So I think that is a beautiful partnership there. They bring their knowledge from the workplace into the classroom, because in the same classroom we may have someone fresh from STPM or SPM, right? They bring with them this rich experience from the workplace, and all the theories and concepts, terminologies they learn in the classroom, they bring it back to their workplace. They use it for presenting their work to their bosses and this and that. So I welcome the new program standard. I was involved in the earlier one. I wasn't involved in the latest one, but I really, really welcome what I see in the new program standard. Thank you.
Yeah, a lot are also celebrating the new,
good news.
Correct, new
when
improvements.
We put forward this some time ago, it wasn't really clicking that well. But what I find now is something that is close to our hearts in ODL.
True. All right, Imran, could I trouble you to look at to project the next? Or this one clearly seeking your views, Shanti.
Okay. As I mentioned just now, Ms. Monica, I don't exactly know the software that was used, but it is homegrown. It was built by a lecturer. It was built by staffs from the IT department. Yeah, after many years of putting our thoughts into it, many years. I'm not talking about 1, 2, 3 years. Yeah, many years, because to start from scratch is something very difficult. As I said, we brought people from outside. In fact, we brought a professor from UTM to help us out with this. It didn't quite well work out. We also brought some other people from outside. It didn't work out until we ourselves built it. I don't exactly know what is the software system. I'm not an IT person. I don't know what software was used. But if you can get in touch with me in my email, I can put you to the unit that is that can help you out with all your queries. The business and development unit will be more than happy to share with you whatever they know. I'm not a technical person. I didn't quite build it. I know I want it, but I did not build it. And I know how I want the system to look like. And it is built according to what we wanted. But if you like to know, Monica, and also the others who may be querying about this particular software, you can get in touch with me with an email. I'll forward it to the business development unit, and they will get in touch with you with whatever queries you may have. No problem at all.
All right.
Sharing is caring.
Thank you, Prof. Shanti. Perhaps Dr. Beha, being also an expert in online learning, this could be another areas that I think you will be very versatile in as well.
I saw the system just now that Prof. Shanti have shown us just now, and I believe it is self-developed from scratch. I don't think there's a specific software, but they obviously use I think programming language from scratch to do that, because it seems like it's very customized in a way that, you know, CLO and things like that. It is very culturally built according to Malaysian context, and I don't think it is from any software. I believe it is self-developed by OUM, but I think it is a very well done job for the question bank. It's a very good system.
But I remember, Dr. Beha, you mentioned that you do have using your LMS to do the online MCQ exams, right?
Yeah.
So would you have some kind of those features as well in your online MCQ exams, where they tag the question to the complexity of that?
Yeah, but we don't have we do have level of complexity, but I don't think we are able to see who has been using the question or whether it has been used. It is not that customized. But most of public universities in Malaysia use the similar system. Like UTM, we use Moodle as a learning management system, and more or less the way we have our question bank being built is the same. But OUM's one is definitely out of the box and definitely self-developed. I think,
correct. Yeah.
I'm 90% sure of that.
Me too, because looking at the requirements that they put in, right, the context is really couldn't be a software that they buy from the rack and implement it immediately.
Definitely
no, I don't think. Definitely. Yes, definitely. Even if it's bought, I think you would have done a lot of customization.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you so much, colleagues and both panels here. Next, Imran, please. Oh, this is about our TOS, the GSU. Is it still relevant in the context of ODL and flexible learning? I think whether it is conventional, ODL, TVET, 2U, 2I, it is still relevant, because at the end of the day, you remember, you have to be mindful why TOS is first developed. And this one, I think, has been clearly emphasized in Prof. Shanti as well as Dr. Nobeha's presentation just now. Because before we attempt to do anything, this would be probably the starting point for all. And Shanti, anything to add on if you would like?
Jadual spesifikasi ujian, or TOS, is actually a guide so that we do not sway away from what we are supposed to assess. So is it relevant? It is very relevant. And even in schools, they have this Jadual spesifikasi ujian. They do have it. So I think when it comes to education and assessment, TOS or JSU is actually, some call it JPU, Jadual Penentu Ujian. I remember seeing that term JPU, Jadual Penentu Ujian. So here is Jadual Spesifikasi Ujian. I believe it means the same thing as TOS. Yes, it is very relevant because it's a guide. And it's something very, very necessary when you want to develop the questions to assess students' understanding of a particular subject. Thank you.
All right, thanks for Shanti. So I guess that would be our collective views from three of us on this question. And can we move on, Imran? Oh, this sounded more like the psychomotor question right from the beginning, I think. Would any one of you like to take on this question?
Probably I'll start first. Dr. Nurbiha, you can probably add on later. How to prepare a question that is more hands-on, we at OUM, we give them take-home exam. All right, we give them take-home exam. If today at 10 a.m., we release the question, before 10 a.m. the next day, it's a one-day take-home exam, yeah? So before 10 a.m. the next day, they have to submit their work. Any minute or two late, the system actually shuts down. So in these sort of take-home exams, we can go to town with the kind of questions that we want to ask the students, you know. Online exam doesn't mean only MCQ, doesn't only mean, you know, choosing A, B, or C. It can also be a take-home exam of a week, take-home exam of a day, take-home exam of a couple of hours, perhaps. It depends on the kind of assessment that the instructor wants to give the student. So if you want more of a hands-on, perhaps a take-home exam of one day, where you can do, you know, more, for example, if it's early childhood, I'm not from the education, but if it's early childhood, if you actually run the kindergarten or something like that, you may want to take videos of the kids, you know, trying out a particular computer-assisted learning, perhaps, and embed it in the assignment or in the exam and to upload it for the instructors to award the marks. I think that's what's coming to my mind at this point in time. If there's anything else, Dr. Nurbiha, you'd like to add on?
Yeah, other than how we administer that, that is, it can be in the form of take-home examination. The way we structure our question for take-home examination, of course, your questions has to be an open book type of question. I believe if you have an open book type of question, you really have normally the authentic questions that really relates to real life and or maybe in the form of problem solving. So these are the kinds of questions that you know that you can have for a take-home examination questions. And I think it is more, this is more suitable for hands-on related questions. If you have in mind, you want them to do something, so you can have take-home examination question and have them to solve problem within the given stipulated time. But of course, it has to be an open book question lah. You have to design it in such a way. That's all I think I can think of.
All right.
To add on, if it's a doctoral level, yeah, if it's a doctoral level, we even allow them, like, in fact, when I was a student, when I was a doctorate student a long time ago, we had a take-home exam of 1 week where we had to evaluate a training program. So the question was something like, you know, choose a training program, evaluate the training program, and so on. So we actually had a week of take-home exam. So during that week, we took videos, we, you know, took photographs, we wrote down who the trainer was, how the training was being conducted, what evaluation method was being used to assess the particular training program, were the participants happy with the training program, and so on. We actually had 1 week take-home exam. So depends on what the outcome, the learning outcome for the subject is all about. If the learning outcome is about, you know, very industry based, then of course the exam paper can be a take-home exam paper with a stipulated time frame given to the student to complete their work. Some cannot be done in one day. Some might need about a week, but there must be a cutoff time, you know. Otherwise, the students will take forever to complete their work. So we have to give them a cutoff, and it's not fair. If there is no cutoff, then it is not fair for someone who takes 10 days and someone who only takes about 5 days to complete the work. So you should give them the time for them to resubmit back the assignments. Thank you.
So thank you so much, both panel members. I think this is all about appropriate time frame given if you are looking at a take-home exam. Now, before you flash another question, I hope that addresses your question. I think Miss Umu Hani, if I hope I got you right. Now, on a separate question that is also raised in the chat function, which I managed to extract just now, I think this question is directed to Dr. Bihar. The gentleman or the lady here is asking, how do we take attendance or convey such message for all students? Because I remember in your presentation, you talk about attendance when it comes to the online exam just now.
Yeah, during the pandemic, because all of our institutions, we have respective peraturan academic, of course. During pandemic, we ask for flexibilities for attendance in teaching and learning session. Initially, what we have in our peraturan academic is that you can be barred from the exam for the final exam if your attendance is not up to 80% attendance. However, of course, to bar a student from a final exam, you have a series of steps. You have to warn him first, you have to issue a letter. But if all of these steps are not taken, the lecturers cannot bar that students from the exam. However, for COVID-19, due to COVID-19 pandemic, we want to have this flexibility so that, if you have difficulties in attending teaching and learning session online, we are not going to bar you from final examination. So that is number one. And because of that, we did not make it compulsory for teaching and learning attendance to be recorded for teaching and learning only. However, for summative assessment purposes, such as online final examination, we make it compulsory for our students. And if you ask me how did we convey this message and all the other messages related to exam to our students, we go from school to school and we have very separate session for undergraduate students, for postgraduate students. We go from school to preach and to explain the types of exam, how can they sit for exam, where can they find the tutorial, where can they test their ability, or if they want to try to experience how it feels like. So this is the kind of information that we convey from faculty to faculty, and we open session to our students for them to ask us questions. So I think this engagement is very important because our students, although our lecturers need support, our students need support even more. So that's why we have also help desk, of course. We have help desk to entertain our students' requests, and whatever questions we try to answer that. So we have this session, we have this engagement, a roadshow from school to faculty, from school to school every semester. Because every semester, sometimes, as I said just now, we have been going through 3 semesters already, 1.5 years. So from one semester to another semester, although the type of summative assessment is more or less similar, but sometimes from time to time, we improve the way we carry out assessment. So that's why if we have any new information, for example, right now, this semester, we have our watermark on our question exam. So this is new for for lecturers, but not new for students. So that's why we do this engagement every semester with our students. At least during semester break, before we reach the second part of the semester. So this is what we do. We have to convey the information to our students.
All right, so thank you, Dr. Bihar, and I hope that addresses some similar questions which are also posted in the chat function in relation to the attendance and how these are communicated to the students. Imran, can I trouble you again to the next? From Mr. Suhaimi from IIUM. Our students insist on securing employment instead of learning. The reality is that they have to pay education loan. What are our views here on this issue? I think this is what Suhaimi is looking for. I think this one is more like why adult learners are learning and working at the same time. Perhaps Shanti, would you want to take on first?
I'm not so sure what exactly this question is asking. Prof. Andy, tell me, where can I put my finger on this, please?
I think I would like to break this question into two parts here. Like, when they pursue higher education studies, the intention, of course, is to gather as much learning as possible. But at the same time, I hope at the end of the learning cycles, I wish to secure a job.
Okay.
So probably how to balance this two, I would read it in that way.
I think time management lah. Okay. You see, a lot of not a lot. In fact, students who join a higher institution of learning, they are learning to get education and skill to secure even a better job than what they would be getting with an SPM or an STPM or an O level or an A level. A degree, a diploma, a master's and PhD definitely would be an indicator for better things to come in life. That is why we find people, for example, in Open University in Malaysia or any open universities out there in the world, we find people who had to secure a job after school, they are returning back to the universities to get an education now. So we have this, this motto, education for all. We will not deprive anyone of an education. So those of them who are already in employment, they know how difficult it is out there if you do not have the paper qualification. It is just not the paper qualification, it is also the skills, it is also the know-how, it is also the many other things that you learn when you obtain a diploma, degree, master's, or a PhD. Those who are in employment, they know how important learning and certification is. Now, those of them who are in the learning process without an employment would probably feel that employment is very important because of probably the condition of their, the condition that they are in at this point in time. Some kids are privileged because the parents put them through the university. Some adults are privileged because their employers put them through the university. When I was teaching, we had a few students from Proton, the organization were paying for the fees for these staffs to gain diploma from the university. So I guess the reality that sinks in here is probably goes down to the participant, to the learner himself. What is important at this point in time? So those who are in employment, they want an education for better things in life. Those who are in education probably need an employment to sustain, So I guess the issue is, it boils down to the person, to the learner himself. What is the necessity at this point in time in his or her life? That's how I see from a very social perspective, I'm sorry if I don't hit the nail, but I think this is what I feel in a nutshell. Thank you, Prof. Andy, Dr. Nurbiha, in case you guys want to add on.
Yeah, I would say if my students comes to me with this kind of dilemma, I would ask him or her to say that which one is your priority. You have to prioritize things. As much as you hate it, you really have to prioritize. You have to put certain things first and the next thing next. And for us, maybe as a lecturer, as a teacher, what we can do is that we have to be empathy, I think, to students being placed in this kind of situation. Maybe they have in the midst of having to balance between having to earn an income for the family as well as having to learn. And then we have to be empathy with the students with this kind of situation. I don't know whether this also hits the nail as being stipulated in the as being posted on the question. But if a student comes to me with this kind of dilemma, then I would say that you have to prioritize things. As much as you hate it, you have to give priority to certain things.
Can I just
Okay.
add on a little while?
Yeah, sure,
Something just came into my mind. Now, in an ODL setting, let me share what's in an ODL setting. In an ODL setting, the student can join a program and defer as many times as the student wishes. For example, the student joins a program and then finds himself or herself with limited finance to pursue the program that particular semester or the semester after that. He or she can actually step out of the program for 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. They can step out and come back again when the finances are better or when he or she is ready to continue. So they just come back in again and continue from where they stopped. That is probably why we don't really get this problem from our students. Whenever the student feels like, I can't carry on, I have this issue, my mom is suffering from something, I'm suffering from something, I have to step out. Yeah, they fill in a form. They do not quit. We don't make our students quit. We don't ask our students to quit. They just fill up a form to defer. The minute they defer, they don't have to pay the fees for the semester. They defer, they do not seek any services from us. And when they're ready, they write back into us. They say, look, I'm back, I want to continue. They continue from where they stopped. It could be 1 year ago, 6 months ago, 2 years ago. Their record will be in our database. So they just come back and continue. Probably that's why we don't have this kind of issues among our students. They are free to step in and step out. Come back when they feel like they're ready and step out when they can't cope anymore. And we also allow students to take a minimum of 1 subject so as not to burden themselves with too much to pay. See, if you take too many subjects, you have to pay a lot. So we allow the student to take 1 subject. I mean, the journey will be long, but they can do 1 subject this semester, another subject, 1 next semester, another subject. Of course, it'll take forever. Our GOT will not be achieved. Okay, our graduate on time or 4 years will not be achieved, but that is not what ODL is all about. So in OUM, we allow the student to take 1 subject, step out, come back, continue, and so on. So sometimes I find students coming back to OUM after 5 years, They say, doctor, you're still around. I say, hey, hi, how are you, So it goes on. So that's the beauty about lifelong learning. The learning doesn't stop. When things happen to you, you step out. When you're good, you come back in again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Shanti and Dr. Bihar. And I think to summarize this, there are actually 2 categories of learners here. One would be the part-time learners who would also be working at the same time as highlighted by Prof. Shanti. And the other one would be probably those that were emphasized by Dr. Bihar just now. The fresh school leavers who have committed for a 3-year or a 4-year degree program, and they would have to take on an education loan which will cost them about 30,000 or so, or some in a private institution, it could be 70,000 or more. So the question by Suhaimi, as I understand this, I have spent this X ringgit Malaysia for my 3 years undergraduate degree. And when I reach the end stage of my degree program where I'm about to step out for employment, how do I ensure that I can secure an employment at that point of time? I think this is very, very subjective, but from the perspective of the institution, I would say the program that is designed should be industry relevant. And this is why we will always say, have a CQI process to monitor and review the content of your program on a regular basis. By doing so, whatever skills, competencies that we are imparting on the learners, then they will be appreciated if they apply for jobs. Then they will say, oh, you have what it takes. You have the skills and competencies that I'm looking for, perhaps through the interview session and looking at the transcripts. And that's where they will see the match between the industry and what the higher education institution has generated. So I think this is like a vicious cycle. It's a combination of every stakeholders here. All right. So Suhaimi, I hope that addresses the question. And also I see some opinions being expressed in relation to this question. And I would say we are all on the same platform from the views expressed in the chat function. Okay, Imran, I need to trouble you again. Oh, this one clearly states, Dr. Bihar, how does UTM organize the synchronous exam for international students? When they're in different time zone.
Yeah, we do have this problem. We have students located outside Malaysia, and in our ODL program currently we do not have international student. All of them are local student. But in our Perdana program, we do have this kind of issue. But what we tell our lecturers is that to be number one is to be empathy with our students, and to be fair, we try as much as we can to be fair. We have students located in China, if I'm not mistaken, but China, the time zone is more or less similar in Malaysia. I think the one that we have problem is somewhere in Europe. So that is somehow can be adjusted, but we tell our lecturers that they have to identify, because these students are not many. But for one courses it is not many. The only time if we did have this problem, we try to have a titik tengah, or like pertemuan tengah yang everybody has to suffer. Like for example, having it at night, maybe a little bit late at night, at 11 o'clock at night, but maybe very early in the morning for the international student. So we say that, everybody has to suffer. Here in Malaysia, they have to sit for the examination very late at night, and the one internationally, you have to sit for the exam very early in the morning. So memang kena cari titik tengah lah. It is a point of agreement. I don't know any other ways, efficient ways on how we can deal with this, but it's the least that we can do. That is what we propose. Somehow it didn't work for everybody. I mean, like, we have complaints, of course, but for now there's nothing much we can do about it. That's what I can say. Sadly, there is no ideal solution for this issue.
All right, thank you, Dr. Bia. I think this question was raised by Fairuz before Shanti's presentation, Prof. Shanti's presentation. Remember, I remember vividly, Prof. Shanti also mentioned that there are a lot of regional centers that OUM has. And I clearly remember this exam on demand that you mentioned, Shanti, Prof. Shanti, right? Would you want to just re-emphasize this for the Mr. Fairuz's sake?
Sure. All right. OUM has international students overseas. We have two types of international students. One group of international students are those who are registered with our international collaborators. So they are registered with the international collaborators. Example, they are registered with international collaborators in Vietnam, for example. Their exams for the same code that we are offering in OUM Malaysia will be offered at a different day, at a different time. And using our Q bank, our question bank, we generate a different set of questions for them. So they'll be sitting for the same exam, same semester, different set of randomized questions for them. So that is how we settle the issue about synchronous examination. Yes, synchronous, but they are not in sync with us in Malaysia. They have it on a different day, a different time, their time, and it's a whole randomized different set of questions. Yeah. Now we have another set of international students. They are registered directly to us. For example, I have students in Hong Kong. I have students in Canada. I have students in Singapore. I have students in where else? Yeah, in the Kingdom of Bahrain and also KSA, yeah, Saudi Arabia. Now, as how Dr. Nurbiha mentioned, we pick, not we, the exam unit will decide on a time that is not too disturbing to the other learners, a common time that is most appropriate. It wouldn't be 2 in the morning, it wouldn't be 3 in the morning, but it would be somewhat appropriate for everyone to have the exam at the same time. Now, this also involves our PhD students overseas. We have a lot of students in the Middle East and other parts of the world. We sometimes have our viva or even our proposal defense in the later part of the evening, you know, at 4 in the evening. We start at 4 in the evening, we end at 7 or 8 p.m. So far we don't really have any issues concerning the different time zone. So far, so good. We've been doing it for almost 20 years now. No issue. I don't see any issue about the synchronous examination as well as the randomized exam papers, same set, different part of the world, different day. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Prof. Shanti and Dr. Biha. It is true what Dr. Biha has mentioned just now. We got to strike a balance. We got to find the midpoint, the titik tengah, as resonated by Dr. Biha quite a number of times. Titik tengah, titik tengah, titik tengah. So it's all about finding the time that is probably convenient to all categories. Whether you are in this time zone or that time zone, that is the best time that you can actually allocate. So I guess that's how we could address this, unless we are now at any point of time. I think we may not be prepared for that as yet in our current education system, because the whole delivery is still tied by either modular basis or semester system. All right. So I hope that addresses the question raised by Encik Fairuz. We will probably take, say, 2 or 3 more questions before we call it a day, because we do not want to stand in between you and your lunch. And you know, a hungry person is always not easy to deal with. All right. So Imran, can I trouble you with 2 more questions? Salam, issues on online exam. Probably look at how panel will promote alternative assessment without final exam. What are the pros and cons? This one, again, as we mentioned just now, in the latest program standards, they are moving away from making final exam mandatory. That means it's just an option provided in a final assessment. As we have mentioned this, I mean, 3 of us would fully agree that whenever we look at assessment, it will always fall back on the achievement or the attainment of the learning outcomes. So the attainment of or rather the mode of assessment would primarily depend on those learning outcomes that we spell out or stipulated in the program or in the course. So it is not so much about me needing to have a final exam unless the program is actually bound by some professional bodies. Because I understand certain professional bodies, they insist that the courses would need to have X number of percentage of final exams. Otherwise, they would not recognize the entire degree program or specific courses in the program itself. Prof. Shanti or Dr. Bihar, would you want to offer, or we can?
I think,
Maybe, Prof. Shanti, you
Dr.
can.
Nurbiha, go ahead.
I'm going to talk about the cons of it. I'm going to go to the other side of the coin. But I would say, well, alternative assessment is very good in a way that you can assess students' ability, for example. But I would like to raise here that this student, for example, they take five subjects in one semester or 6 subjects in one semester. If all of the subjects has this alternative assessment, with one, for example, all of the 5 subjects requires them to do portfolio, for example, or portfolio project. So you have a mix of portfolio and projects, for example. So this is where this heavy workload comes in. And although we tell our students beforehand when do we need them to submit all of these projects or portfolios, we have to bear in mind they do not. It is not our subject, our only subject that they have to entertain. They also have to entertain all the other 4 subjects. So while alternative assessment is very good in assessing students' learning, please also bear in mind that our student has also other subjects that they have to take and design our alternative assessment, not I say minimally, I would just say just enough for them to carry out, to do this alternative assessment. Do not go too extra about it because too much is, we have all these issues on emotional well-being of our students. So I think this one, if we promote that too much, this will come into picture. That I would say. The good side of it, I think there are many people telling us about the pros of alternative assessment. I do not want to highlight on that. Yeah.
All right, Shanti.
To add on to what Dr. Nurbiha said, yes, alternative assessment without final exam, as much as it is welcomed due to its flexibility, alternative assessment brings with it a lot of flexibility in terms of time and and variety that can be presented, but it is also very time consuming. When you sit for a final exam, you're done with, but when you have alternative assessment, it takes a lot of time consuming. So those of them who are actually working and studying, this could pose as a problem. So the con of alternative assessment is this line. So having said that, well, the student knows what's in store for them. So sometimes the student will decide whether to register for more subjects or for less subjects, depending on the kind of time that they have in their hands. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Prof. Shanti and Dr. Nurbiha. I think what both panel has raised, particularly what Dr. Bihar has mentioned, the problem is real in respect to the cons here, the so-called the perspective from, or rather dimension from that angle is true. If all of us start to look at infusing alternative assessment, for example, like what Dr. Bihar has mentioned, every courses will require the student to submit an e-portfolio. Can you imagine a student who registered for 6 courses in a particular semester of 14 weeks, a person would be drowned. So this is where we would urge, I think, the program leader. If you are the program leader for a specific program, you need to probably have a very regular discussion session or meeting with all the course lecturers, not only looking at the content, but also looking at how you roll out this alternative assessment. Because Student workload is very, very important to ensure the success other than the teaching methodology or the adoption of technology in online learning. All right. And can we take 2 more questions? Imran, the next one, please. Students are not concerned about evaluation without weightages. How can we encourage students to self-evaluate? There is no weightage for it. I think this was raised by, if I remember, was during Prof. Shanti's presentation, where you talk about self-assessment. And I think this gentleman here or lady here, the anonymous soul, is saying students are always looking at marks. Anything that does not relate to marks, then they will shift their focus or not be interested in. So this self-assessment thing, how do we want to promote among the learners?
I believe this calls for maturity among the students. You know, the more matured they are, they would be very concerned about self-evaluation. How much of learning is taking place within them? What is the point of investing so much of money in a program if you do not learn anything from it? So I would bring it down to maturity. Adult learners come with this maturity. They know why they are there. We have a lot of doctors doing MBA with us. Why doctors are doing MBA? You'd ask. You see, doctors sometimes, they have to lead a department, or they are directors of a clinic community, or directors of a hospital, you know, a big hospital. But they do not know how to manage. They do not know how to plan. They don't have the skills to do budgeting. They wouldn't know how to handle motivation among their senior nurses. They may not know how to make their doctors, being punctual, for example. There are a variety of reasons why doctors want to do an MBA. So this also calls for self-evaluation. Why are students doing a particular program is to actually upgrade themselves. You want to upgrade from don't know to know. You want to upgrade yourself from don't have to have. So if a student has the maturity to think like this, I believe that self-evaluation would come in automatically. Otherwise, I think the instructor has to put in a lot of effort to instill self-evaluation or self-realization among the students. You see, passing an exam for the sake of getting an A or a B, I don't think will bring you very far in your, in your work life. Self-evaluation, knowing what you want from the program that you're pursuing, is the one that will bring you far. So at this point, I probably would say maturity among the students. And if that is missing, then it's up to the instructor, the lecturer, to actually put it forward, to remind them to always self-evaluate them so that learning gets through, passes through them, and it actually stays with them. Thank you, Dr. Nurbiha. Perhaps you'd have something, Prof. Andy?
Yeah, because my students are undergraduate students, so I think they have different background than
Yes.
Adult students in OUM. I did have like concept tests every time I ended my weekly teaching and learning meeting with my students. And my concept test is a multiple choice question. It sometimes has 5 questions, sometimes 8, sometimes if I have more time, then I have 10. So there are several numbers. Sometimes I take the questions from all over the internet and put there. But I tell my students this way: if you are able to answer all of these questions, at the end of the day, you'll be able to understand more about why. Sometimes I explain that beforehand to my students. And I always leave it to my students. And of course, I didn't force them. I said that if you want to understand more, then you should answer this question. You should answer these quizzes. And I did get responses. Well, it's not all of my students answer all of the quizzes, but when they think that they want to know more, then they answer specific set of quizzes, and I don't mind. But for example, if I have my total number of students, like for example 40, then I have at every question, I don't have full 40 of students attempting the quizzes, but I have up to 30 students attempting every quizzes. So I think that is sufficient. I think they are able to know which quizzes they want to self-evaluate, and I tell them you can choose any of these quizzes. I won't take marks from that, but it is for your own good. But I tell them beforehand, after you answer all of these quizzes, what is it that you'll be able to know more? I think that's the least that we can do. We try to encourage them as much as we can, but we do not want to be like a mother yang membebel to our kids. But I think they are at the degree program. You should be able to think for yourself. This is for your own good. I think the least we can do is maybe tell them, and I think they are able to see our effort in preparing the questions and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Bihar and Prof. Shanti. I think we three of us again, we would fully agree that this one would rely mainly on the commitment and dedication of the learners, yes. And secondly, as Dr. Bihar has mentioned, if the learners are able to see the benefit it presents to them, certainly they will go for it. And one of the reasons why we would encourage self-evaluation or self-assessment or self-activity or self-test, call it any self, everything is actually revolving around pacing the learner's learning or journey of the learning. Because if you don't pace this learner's journey, then you would not know whether they have acquired these learning outcomes, probably 1/3 of the learning outcome, 2/3, or the complete learning outcome of the course itself. So by infusing this self-activities or self-evaluation, it is certainly would be very, very helpful, because the learners themselves would definitely appreciate it when they see the beauty of this self-test and self-assessment. So we hope that addresses the questions raised by this gentleman soul, anonymous soul. Perhaps one last question, Imran. Special needs. I think this question was also raised during the course development and delivery of the learning support services. Perhaps at that time, we were actually looking at how to assist the learning of such special ability learners. Now the focus would be on how do we assess the learners in this category. Would Shanti, Prof. Shanti, would you like to take this on?
Sure. Let me share an example of a student with a special need. Actually, we have many students with special needs in OUM. Yeah, either they are wheelchair bound, some are blind, some are slow learners. So we have actually an array of people with disabilities in OUM. Having said that, I must share with you that not all programs we can take students with special needs. So some students with disabilities, or we are not able to cater for them for a particular program. So we will suggest to them to register for a different program, right? So let me take an example of a blind student we had. for a master's program, a master's in psychology. He's actually a medical doctor who turned blind. After his medical degree, something went wrong and he was turning blind until he turned fully blind. And he enrolled for our master's in psychology. How did we assess this particular student? He uses JAWS, as in the software, JAWS, he uses JAWS. It is installed in his computer. And our exam paper was converted into this particular software, JAWS. And a staff from the exam unit went over to his place. See, this is very hand-holding. It's very, it's a close contact with the student, yeah? You can't do this from a distance. It's difficult to do this from a distance. So one of our exam unit staff, our exec, saw this student at his place of training, and they sat through, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 4 to 5 hours. 2.5 hour exam. I think it's supposed to be a 2-hour exam, became a 4 or 4.5 hour exam. Because JAWS software late, you see, the student can't write. So the student had to type using the particular software, and then the collection of the exam paper. You see, the student, being a blind student, also has the modules in his laptop. Modules are downloaded. So in order to avoid the student from referring to the, to the module in the workshop, I mean, in the laptop and so on, we had to have our own staff sitting with the particular student. So this is just one student with disability, but we have other learners with wheelchair bound and all that we don't have a trouble with them. We have some modules in Braille, not all the modules. So when students apply to do our programs, we check first what kind of disability they are coming with, and then only we agree with the programs and so on. If they're asking for program A and that program A cannot be offered to them due to their disability, we don't do that. We offer something else instead. Because we don't have Braille for all our modules. We don't have cassettes. We don't have audio lessons for all those who are blind. Because students who are blind, they need audio lessons. They need to, listen from cassettes or audio gadgets to listen to our modules. So we don't have that for all our students. So depending on what we have, we cater for our students with special needs. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Prof. Shanti. I think when we talk about special needs learners, we have to rely very heavily on, this terminology that people have used this over and over again, assistive technology, from Braille translation software, adapted keyboards, audiobooks, screen magnifiers, and JAWS, as Prof. Shanti has mentioned, is actually job access with speech. I think this is like a software that translates the text into speech, where the disabled person who is unable to see or probably visually impaired will be able to use the other senses. So if we are offering programs, I think what Prof. Shanti has mentioned very, very clearly is that you have to decide which are the programs that can actually cater for this special needs learners. It's not all programs to be able to do that. And also, I think in the COPA, under Area 5, if I'm not mistaken, under the educational resources, there is a section, there's a standard that mention what are the provisions that you have if you're offering to this special needs learners. So it is not all programs, but the institution has to make a stand or a clear policy or principle saying for program A, yes, program B, no, program C, no, depending on your resources that you have in the institution. I hope that addresses the question of Mr. Yazis, UITM. And I'm not sure whether Dr. B, how would you like to chip in or?
Yeah, I have no experience in addressing students with special needs. I know one or two students in UTM with special needs, but they are more wheelchair-bound students.
I see.
So they have no problem with blindness or hearing impaired. So I think what Prof. Shanti has addressed, I think is very comprehensive in a way. I think I really don't have experience on this.
All right. So with that, we'll conclude the session for this morning because we would like to stay on, but unfortunately the time doesn't permit. And don't worry, Dr. Bihar, we definitely come back to the pantun if you do have. But let us summarize this for now. In conclusion, I think we all understand that student assessment is a very crucial aspect of quality assurance because that drives the students' learning, particularly if they are planned, conducted, and reported appropriately. And it is also important because the results of the assessment form the basis of awarding qualifications. And the take-home message from three of us would be, if you are looking at this broad topic of assessment, perhaps it is good to filter this assessment into three major categories. Like you got to look at what are the relationship between assessment and learning. And this is what Dr. Bihar and Prof. Shanti has been mentioning about the outcome-based education right from the beginning. And what are the various assessment methods that you can adopt? Perhaps not only looking at the traditional one, but also the alternative assessment, but bearing in mind the workload of the students would play a very critical role here. And of course, lastly, is the management of student assessment across the whole spectrum of the learning journey of the student. So that is what the conclusion from three of us. But if in case Prof. Shanti or Dr. Bihar, you would like to say a few words to the 600 over participants that are still with us. I know our perut dah berkeroncong, some of us. So we will try to keep this short, sweet, and simple before we say goodbye to all for now. Shanti, anything from you or Bihar?
I'd like to thank MQA for providing us this platform for sharing, sharing our best practices. Sometimes we have so many questions in our mind, how to go about doing assessment and so on. So platforms like this actually ease that weaknesses that we have within ourselves. We tend to see in a different perspective, look at other approaches, because at the end of the day, we want to give our best to our students. We want to give our best to our institution. So I like to thank MQA for actually allowing this platform for sharing our best practices to the others. Probably others also have good practices at their own institution of higher learning. Thank you, Prof. Andy, for doing this session very santai. I like it. It's very relaxing and very santai. And I'm looking forward for the pantun from Dr. Nurbiha. I think she has one ready.
Yes, she has.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. Thank you, MPA.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think thank you, Associate Professor Dr. Santi, Prof. Andy for chairing the session. I did myself learn a lot, and I learned a lot from the questions as well. So I'm trying to take all of this in. And maybe because I saw a lot of questions on how do we penalize students? How do we, my students are copying answers and things like that. Maybe at UTM, what happened is that if you want to penalize students, number one, you have to make sure you have sufficient evidence. It's not good to assume, although we are very 99.9% sure this student is cheating, is copy pasting things from all over the place. but without
Evidence.
very concrete evidence, you cannot do anything. So you can assume, but to be fair to students, you don't penalize students unless you have very concrete evidence. So I hope I addressed some of the questions in the pigeonhole. There's a lot of related questions relating to penalizing students, and always refer back to our peraturan akademik at university. We have our respective peraturan akademik, although it has been there for so many years already, but I believe that it still addresses issues on misconduct, whether or not it is being carried, our assessment is being carried out online or face to face. I think most of our peraturan akademik, it address in any context. If you carried out misconduct in any assessment context, assessment mode, the peraturan akademik is still intact. So always refer back to peraturan akademik and go through jawatan kuasa tata tertib, the procedure to do this, to penalize students if it is necessary, and if you come across a very concrete evidence. I think that is my last word about our session today, and it's good that we have a lot of very intriguing questions. It has triggered my mind as well. And for the final part, my pantun. I have two pantun. Okay? So number one, I copy paste that from the internet, and number two, I pen that on my own. So number one, hendak memetik daun balas, buah isi buah berangan. Berbudi bukan minta dibalas, hanya untuk kenang-kenangan. Kapal berlayar syarat muatan, membawa buah tangan dan juga impian. Terima kasih atas jemputan, mana yang baik boleh disimpan. Thank you very much, everyone.
Okay, so thank you so much, Dr. Biha. It looks like we are all pantun experts, I would say, starting with this morning, the off the cuff. I mean, within a short period of time, you are able to lahirkan the pantun Prof. Shanti as well as Dr. Biha. Kalau memanjat sudah sampai ke puncak, kalau menurun sudah sampai ke lembah. Andai jauh dipandang mata, wajahmu jadi pengubat duka. Sekiranya ada kata menghiris luka, semoga pintu maaf masih terbuka. So that's the end for the session this morning. So take care, my fellow colleagues. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay connected.
Thank
God
you,
bless.
everyone. See you again, Prof. Santi, Prof. Andy.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you. Imran, can you take a picture of us, Imran, sebagai kenangan manis bersama Imran, including your backdrop yang dahsyat tu, yang universe of MQA tu.
Jauh sikit lah. Alright.
Who is taking the picture, yeah?
Ada.
Ada, ya?
Only screenshot.
Are we done? Nobody's counting, so I don't know.
Okay, done.
Done, yeah?
Alright, thanks very much.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Our
Thank you.
panelists.
Okay.
Thank you semua.
Thank you, Dr. Biha. Thank you.
Nice to know you.
Yeah.
Nice to know you as well.
Hope we will meet again on our, some other sessions as well.
Yes, it's very interesting session with you. Yeah.
Shanti,
I am